Story 1. I think I am falling in love with my wife. I don't know what to do. This is all a very complicated and sad situation. About 4 years ago, my wife and partner of 8 years passed away due to complications after the birth, very rare, of our second son. I was deployed at the time and completely devastated. After flying home, I felt that nothing would make me happy again. My sons are great, now 6 and 4, but overwhelming, so I asked a sister of one of my Marine buddies, Cass, to help out. She had been friends with my wife but not great friends, and she agreed in exchange for a place to stay. At the time, Cass was only 20 years old and in quite a bit of debt in fault of her extremely abusive ex-boyfriend, who she had finally left about 3 months earlier. During the first few weeks of her helping out with the boys, she asked to borrow money to see a doctor due to shaking hands. No insurance. I happily obliged. She was an angel doing all of the cooking and cleaning and keeping my young family together. It turned out that she had developed some sort of neurological disorder, probably brought on by repeated abuse. At the time, it seemed simple. I had good insurance, she needed health care. I never thought I'd be able to move on from my wife, and she was afraid of intimacy. I agreed that I would marry her but keep our platonic relationship. She promised not to burden me with her debt, and we had a prenuptial agreement. In all, I know that this is fraud of the government, hence the throwaway, but we were both so damaged and needed somebody, if not intimately. The past 3 years have been about as good as expected, if not better. Cass is great, better than great. She keeps the house spotless, has food ready every night when I get home, and has been working overnight as a baker and almost has her debt paid off. Her condition has improved greatly also due to the great medical care she was able to receive. With the boys, she is a saint. She tells them about their mother, shows them pictures, takes them places for fun, and even taught them how to read, of course. The 6-year-old just finished kindergarten, but my 4-year-old is going to be the smartest kid in his class next year. Sometimes the 4-year-old calls her Mommy, but she shushes him and reminds him that her name is Cass and that Mommy is the angel whose picture is above the fireplace. Once her debt is fully paid off, the kids are in school, and she saves up a bit of money, she is going to go into a nursing program. Our relationship is still platonic, but very caring. I've cried on her shoulders more times than I can count, and she's done the same. One night, I was very stressed out and yelled at her about something pretty inconsequential. She had taken my sons to see Santa without me. She, of course, became quite frightened, but we worked it out and I even offered to pay for her to see a counselor. She didn't. That was 2 years ago, and we have had little fights ever since, but I've been able to work through them. She seems to understand me whenever I'm hurt, upset, or angry and is calming in a way that I can't explain. The problem, Reddit, is that I think I might be falling for her. I've been noticing little things. Her scent, her smile, her laugh, the way she smiles with her eyes when she sees me, how much my boys love her. Not to mention that she's gorgeous, hardworking, and one of the strongest people I've ever encountered. A few nights ago, I almost kissed her after we had put the boys to bed, and her hugs goodbye have started lasting a little bit longer. The other day, she was taking a nap in my bed. She was washing her sheets, and I wanted to join her, not have sex with her, just lay with her and hold and kiss her. I don't know what to do or how to even bring this up. It's been 4 years since my wife died. I can only think of a quote from a Song of Fire and Ice book in which a character says that, when the sun has set, no candle can replace it, meaning that since his true love has died, nobody could replace him. That's how I used to feel. But there have been days where my thoughts have been occupied with Cass and I haven't even thought about my wife. I feel bad about it, and I still miss her, but I never thought that I'd be able to move on. I feel guilty and disloyal at the same time. I want her not just sexually or physically. I want to be romantically intimate with her, not just as friends. I don't know how to bring it up. I don't want to scare her or make her uncomfortable, but this is becoming more difficult than I could have ever imagined. I was thinking about asking her to get dinner, just the two of us, and bringing it up, but what if she refuses? How can I gauge her interest? If it means anything, the other day she was having a hard time with the boys. They were restless and being out of hand, so I brought her home some of her favorite flowers. She was extremely giddy and gave me another lasting hug and a quick kiss on the lips. I was taken aback, but she pranced around finishing dinner and putting the flowers in a vase. What does this mean? TLDR. After my wife died, I married a good friend's sister for healthcare benefits, and now I feel as if I'm falling for her hard. What should I do? Edit. It's been an hour on here and you've convinced me to tell her. I've called her favorite fancy restaurant and made a reservation. Her brother agreed to babysit and let her/me stay at his place tonight if she isn't into it/feels uncomfortable. She paid off her debt this morning apparently, just texted me a picture of the check, and next week is our 3-year anniversary, so that is the prelude. I'm gonna tell her at dessert. I'm nervous as hell. Don't worry, I'll update y'all because so many have demanded it. Update 1. I told my wife I loved her. May 30th, 2013. Everything went amazing. Just got home. Love Reddit. Will update. Time to go make out with my wife. Update 2. I just spent the night snuggling and kissing my wife. Warning. This is kind of adorable and even I still don't believe it. May 30th, 2013. Last night was hectic as hell. At first, our younger son had eaten what he calls a giant fuzzy spider, and Cass wanted to take him to the hospital even though he was fine. Her brother, we'll call him Joe, told her that he'd take care of it and basically forced her out of the house to celebrate getting out of debt. She really didn't seem like she wanted to go at all. I became effing nervous. So we got to the restaurant pretty early, but luckily they had a table. She ordered wine, which was odd because she hasn't drank much since she broke up with her ex, but I figured it was a time to celebrate. We made small talk for a while, but it seemed forced, and I knew that I had to tell her soon. So before the entree even came, I said that I had something to talk to her about. She didn't smile and told me that she knew. Joe told her, and my goddamn heart almost stopped. That effer. I hurriedly told her that I was so sorry. I didn't want her to find out that way. I wanted to tell her myself. She shook her head, frowned, and said that it was okay. She just wanted me to be happy and that I deserved it. I told her that I didn't want to stress her out or make her uncomfortable, but I just needed to tell her and see how she felt, and that it was completely up to her. She gave me a look and said that it actually was up to me and just to do what made me happy. She said that she was probably going to move out after her program ended and promised to stay out of the way until then. It was then that I realized something was a bit off and asked, WTF had Joe told her? She said that he told her I wanted to take her out to dinner to tell her that I had started developing feelings for a girl and wanted to ask Cass if it would be okay if I asked this girl out. It was then I realized that Joe had set me up for the most climactic pickup line ever to exist. Our entree came. I had shrimp and pesto gnocchi and she had crab legs, for you detail lovers. And I explained that yes, I had started developing feelings for a girl. I just didn't want it to mess up what we had. She said that it wouldn't mess anything up. She still loved the boys and would take care of them and the house. I continued to then explain that I wasn't going to ask the girl on a date though, and she asked incredulously, why not? Then I dropped my smoothest line I've ever dropped. Because I'm already on a date with her, right? Thanks, Joe. Because he must know about your planned movie and really wanted that line. She gave me this look that she gives my sons when they tell her things like, I'm going to the mall by myself, or I have a girlfriend named Tammy. Then she looked away, smiled and shook her head, and asked, really? I nodded and told her that I cared about her more than anybody else alive other than my sons, that I loved our family, and that I had fallen in love with her. She then took a drink of wine, rolled her eyes and said, about time, Alex, and I'll never forget what happened next. Maybe it was a faux pas, but I leaned across the table and kissed her, spilling her wine, but neither of us cared, and we kissed for about a minute before she told me to get off her before her crab legs got cold. This was joking, but not, you'd have to know her. After leaving the restaurant, we got ice cream and sat around and kissed some more before heading home. Joe was sitting on our couch watching one of those VH1 dating shows with a shit-eating grin on his face, and Cass ran in screaming at him that he ruined everything and that she was going to have to move in with Mom now. We let him believe it for about 5 seconds before bursting into laughter. He shook my hand and told me that the boys were sleeping and left. I picked Cass up and kissed her and carried her to my room where we, made out for like 2 hours and snuggled the shit out of each other. She isn't ready for anything else, but emphasized, yet. I'll give her all the time in the world. At one point, the youngest son came in because of a nightmare and brought his dog, a golden retriever puppy, and claimed that the doggy was scared, so we, of course, let him in. I woke up early to make everyone breakfast and of course deliver, and am about to go and kiss my wife goodbye and ask my boss for the second part of the day off, so that I can spend more time with her while the boys are at school/preschool. I'm really sorry I haven't replied to everything. I was a little busy, but thank you all for the support. Update 3, very quick update. My wife and I are doing fine May 31st, 2013, but I'm still unsure how to provide proof. I've lost the receipt for the restaurant and didn't pay with a card and won't post pictures for obvious reasons, such as years of defrauding the government, but I will deliver and find a way, I promise. As a man of my word, haven't I always delivered so far? And to those of you who are talking about a second wedding ceremony, we just kissed for the first time 2 nights ago. Overly attached Reddit. Finally, thank you to whoever gave me gold. I spent about $25 last night buying Joe beers, but next time please use that money for real good. Take a vet to lunch, learn CPR, I don't know, but again, many thanks to you. I promise I'll update again in the future, but don't be angry if it isn't very often. I've been a little busier than normal. Cheers. Update 4. Everything with my wife that I married for insurance reasons then fell in love with was going well until last night. June 25, 2013. TLDR of my life. My wife died 4 years ago when I was deployed, and I, Alex, 28M, ended up marrying the girl, Cass, 24F, who was taking care of my children and keeping up with my house while I was grieving. I did this because she was having medical issues stemming from past domestic abuse and had no insurance. Apparently, I can't post this as an update because of some rule. It's fine. I'd advise anybody to look through my past submissions. I don't think I can post them on here. If you are interested in what happened about a month ago, but apparently, this is a different issue. Things were going very well, except I started developing feelings for her. I was afraid of scaring her or making her feel unsafe, but Reddit convinced me to take the plunge. Now I'm happily dating my wife. Hey everybody, I hope your workday is going well. My day has been crazy. Everything has been going wonderfully lately, though it was somewhat strange at first explaining it to our friends and family. But most of them had already caught on, including my sons, who act as if nothing has changed. I'm pretty sure the little shit knew the entire time. Anyways, last night I came home and Cass was out of it. Dinner was burnt, which is no big deal. I can't really cook well or anything. But it's out of character and she was drinking lightly, only 1 or 2 glasses of wine. I asked her what was wrong. Obviously I was concerned. And she told me that her ex-boyfriend, 30M, got parole last week. I was flabbergasted, since she should have been able to testify at his parole hearing, I believe. Apparently, the crime that he was incarcerated for was unrelated to the abuse, which I had always assumed was the reason, but Cass had been 1, assured it would put him away for a decade at least, and 2, had been far too afraid to testify against him or press charges. Apparently, he'd been arrested for this felony, and when he was being held, he asked her to post bail, but instead, she asked my first wife for help moving out and moving on. I don't know what to do. I don't think that we have any legal ways to put him back into prison. She knows that she should have gone to the police and is guilt-ridden and upset about it. Now, I know that she's going to be safe because if he tries to even contact her, I'll take a legal recourse of action to make sure that he doesn't so much as touch her. I've taken off work today, but promise that even when I go back, I'll have my buddy stopping by throughout the day, but I don't know how to make her feel safe. I've contacted my lawyer about filing a restraining order, and he said it shouldn't be too hard, but she's a mess. I just don't know how to make her believe that she's safe. I doubt this piece of shit will come around, but I know what I'm going to do if he tries. Update 5. September 3rd, 2014. Hey Reddit, I first of all would like to apologize for not keeping you guys updated. I've honestly just been pretty occupied with life lately, and last night I had trouble sleeping. I was just browsing the internet when an article came up about Reddit, and I thought, I wonder how those nice people are doing? Then I signed in and realized that a lot of you really care about how my life is going with Cass. The answer is pretty well now. Things got tough for a while when her ex was released from prison last year though. She was so afraid that he'd contact her until he did. I remember that night like it was 5 minutes ago. Somebody rang our doorbell and the oldest son answered. He asked for Cass. She told the boys to go upstairs and gave me a look, and I knew, but she didn't look scared. The bastard apologized and begged for forgiveness and asked for a second chance. She was so brave. I wanted to kill him, but she told him no and asked him to leave. He did, and he tried to contact her a few more times before we got an order of protection against him. Last I heard, he moved upstate to live with his dad or something. Around this time, her brother, Joe, also got into a really bad car accident and ended up having to move in with us for a while. He's a great guy and one of my best friends, so we didn't mind, but it was a stressful time. About 7 or 8 months ago, we finally consummated our marriage, I guess you can say. The boys are doing great and are really happy. Cass got a pretty good job, although I think she's working too much overtime and loves it. We're expecting our first child in February and couldn't be more excited. You could say that life is pretty good. I'll be around for another few hours if you guys have any questions. Final update. April 29th, 2015. Technically, she was born early March, but I didn't want to make the title, "It was a girl." Sorry for not updating, it was a pretty rough pregnancy, and Cass has put her foot down about wanting more. I guess 3 is enough, but everything turned out great. Little Teresa was 21 inches and 9 pounds at birth and as bald as I am. She's way easier than the boys were. She hardly ever cries and is the most photogenic baby ever. Our youngest son is completely smitten and always tries to help. It's less cute than you think. Joe is also doing okay. His back is still bothering him, but he's dating a girl who actually went to my high school, 2 years younger than me though. He's pretty happy with her and we're all very happy for him. Other than new fatherhood, not much to update. I'm home watching the baby today while Cass is out, so I should be around for a while. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Dad left me and Grandma to fend for ourselves with failing family biz 6 years ago. I turn it into a gold mine. Grandma passes and leaves it all to me. Now Dad comes crawling back. Hey, so I, 24F, recently came into a lot of money after my grandma passed away, and that's become the bone of contention between me and my estranged father, 48M. My parents got married a month after I was conceived after dating for 2 years. I was the real reason they got married, and initially everything was nice and happy. But then my mother was diagnosed with stage 3 throat cancer, and before I was old enough to even process it, she was gone. She passed away when I was really little, around 5 or 6 years old, after battling cancer for a really long time. After that, it was an uphill climb for all of us emotionally because it was really difficult to process a loss like that, since my mother was very young and so was I. My mother's parents lived in Missouri and would often come to visit me here in San Francisco, but they couldn't take care of me full-time, so I lived with my dad and my grandma, my dad's mom. Things were tough because my dad was also kind of young and he had a family to support. For the first 10 years, it was easier since my grandpa was around to take care of the family business. It wasn't a very large-scale or successful business, but it was something nevertheless, and it could put food on the table, so at the time that was enough. My grandpa would run the family business, and my dad was trying to make his way up the corporate ladder. Then when I was 15, my grandpa passed away from a heart attack and our family fell apart. My grandpa had left the business to my dad and my grandma to run, but he didn't want it, and so the responsibility fell entirely to my grandma, who literally had no idea how to run a business. She'd never been to college and had married her husband young, and after that she'd just been a stay-at-home mother. She considered selling the business but couldn't bring herself to do it because she knew how much it meant to her husband. She couldn't sell it because of her sentimental attachment to it, and that led to a lot of problems between her and my dad, who wanted to sell it and move into a bigger apartment and a more upmarket address so he'd be able to impress his business associates with it. After a lot of fighting, my grandma told him that he could ditch the business if he wanted to, but she wasn't going to sell. Somehow, we managed to rope in my maternal grandparents to buy out my dad's share so he could be rid of it all, but we'd still keep the business within the family. And they agreed to it because they'd always been on good terms with my grandma. But that wasn't an end to all of our problems, like we'd expected it to be. In fact, it was just the beginning. Like I said, my grandma had no idea how to run a business, and so it was really difficult for her to keep it up and running. She was thankful that some of my grandpa's employees had still stuck around and were trying to help her, when a lot of them quit after my grandpa died. Honestly, I can't blame them either, because in the first couple of years my grandma wasn't very good and things were going really badly for us. I was just 15, so obviously I was of no help. My dad used to live with us, but he was of no help to us whatsoever. Every time my grandma would try to ask him for advice or help, he would shut it down and get mad because he didn't want to hear about it. And his only solution to any business-related problems was to just sell it off and let it go. But at that point, we couldn't even do that because the business was doing so badly. It wasn't profitable enough for someone to even buy us out, and we were a local small-scale business, so it was getting harder and harder for us to keep up. My dad was of no help, and the employees were quitting left and right. But in spite of all of that, my maternal grandparents tried to be supportive and even offered to involve more people to fund the business. But my grandma refused because she couldn't put more money at risk. Back then, things got even worse when after a year, my dad met a woman at work and moved in with her. So now my grandma and I were completely on our own because he wouldn't even come back home to us. He would send us some money occasionally, but we were literally living hand to mouth by then. He didn't take me with him to live with his new girlfriend because she wasn't comfortable with the idea of having to live with his ex-wife's teen daughter. My dad would come by once a week for dinner with the family, but even then, he wasn't all there with us and would either be on the phone or just silently eat his dinner and then leave. It was clear to me then that he was just doing it as an obligation, but he didn't want to spend any time with me or his mother at all. At 15, I finally gave up any hopes of my father ever stepping up and being a good dad to me. Until then, I'd still hoped and prayed that someday we might have a good relationship, but after he moved in with his girlfriend, I gave up because that was never going to happen. Then a couple of weeks before my 18th birthday, he proved me right by cutting ties with us entirely. He eloped with his second wife and didn't even bother to tell us in person. He sent us an email to inform us that he was moving to NYC with his wife and said that he didn't want us contacting him anymore. I was not going to be a minor anymore in just a few weeks, so he had no legal obligations tying him down anymore. I wasn't surprised in the slightest, but my grandma was disappointed, so I had to be strong through it all for the both of us. He blocked me and my grandma so we couldn't contact him, and I think he'd even changed his number. I was mostly worried about how I was going to pay for college because I really couldn't afford a student loan, given how ridiculously difficult they are to pay off in the future. I already knew I wanted a business degree and my grades were decent too, so I was desperate to go to college and learn things that would help me and my grandma in the real world. I'd already been doing a lot of research and homework on how to restart the business, which had been nothing but a huge liability so far, and we'd made it even worse somehow. Financially, we were doing pretty badly, and now it was about to get worse because my dad had left. We could have asked for help from my maternal grandparents, but they'd already helped us out with the business, and we couldn't just keep on asking them for more. Both of them were retired teachers, and it wasn't like they had a fortune to spend either. I just couldn't sit by and let that happen. So as a last resort, I decided to take matters into my own hands instead of waiting for someone to come along and fix things for me. I was supposed to start college in the fall, but a couple of months before that, around the same time as my birthday, I decided that I was going to go online and try to promote our family business. I can't say exactly what we deal in because that might make us easier to track, but it's something that appeals to women mostly. We did have a business page, but it was useless and mostly inactive because with school and household chores that my grandma couldn't do due to her age, I didn't have the time to look after that as well, and my grandma wasn't very good with social media, so it was just there. It existed, but it was of no use to us. Around 2017 to 18, the whole promotion of small local businesses on social media was sort of working, and once I graduated from high school, I decided to put all my time and energy into that before college. So while my friends were out celebrating this new chapter of our lives, I was back home applying to colleges that I could afford to attend even by a long shot and working on rebooting the page. Luckily, around a few weeks in, one of our posts about a certain product went viral, and soon enough our inbox was flooded with people from all over the state wanting to buy from us, not just that one product but also others that we sold. And we grew exponentially in the coming few months. We were able to pay off all our debts over time and even started saving, thanks to the sheer power of social media. It's been 6 years and we're still going pretty strong. I wouldn't say that we're millionaires, but our business was doing well enough for me to be able to attend college without loans or anything. After I graduated, I came back and took over running it all so that my grandma could retire, and that's how it's been for the last couple of years. Now earlier this year, my grandma passed away, and I was shattered over it because she was my whole world. But I was happy that she'd passed in her sleep. She was in her late 70s and had lived a long and eventful life. She died of natural causes and passed away peacefully and painlessly. That's more than enough for me. I didn't tell my dad or call him to the funeral because I didn't know how to reach him. I could have, of course, done some digging to find out, but I didn't want to do that because it didn't seem worth it. Also, if I hadn't done that when he'd abandoned us, then I didn't see any reason for me to do it now. It's been several months since my grandma passed, and recently I was informed of her will. She left her shares of the business to me, while the remaining 50% was still owned by my maternal grandparents. But I know that they're going to leave their shares to me as well, so I really own this business now. What came as a surprise to me was that she'd also left the house and all her savings to me as well, and she'd managed to save a lot over the past 6 years because she'd lived the same frugal and modest lifestyle that she'd always been used to. So I basically inherited everything. But my father also inherited something that I found out about only recently. He'd inherited this really old and weird abstract painting that my grandma kept in the living room, even though it was very ugly and didn't go with the room's aesthetic at all. Apparently, that was something that my dad had insisted that she buy at an art exhibit when he was 10 years old, and she'd kept it all these years as a memory. All of this happened a couple of weeks ago because my grandmother had left strict instructions that the contents of the will were not to be disclosed until the probate process was done. My grandma's lawyer had notified both me and my dad when the process began, and it had been shortly after the funeral. He was very upset that I hadn't contacted him first, but even the lawyer had to hire a professional to locate him, so it was ridiculous for him to even expect that I'd go to such lengths for a person who hadn't checked on us even once in the last 6 years. We didn't speak after that for months until recently when the reading of the will took place, and it was a virtual meeting since we were in different states and he was too busy to fly down here. There I was told about what I'd be getting out of this, and my dad only had one dusty old painting, so there wasn't much to say there. She'd also left my maternal grandparents a little money and some of her jewelry as a thank you for everything they'd done, so they were part of the meeting as well. We were all present to witness the spectacular meltdown that my dad had once he realized that he was only getting one painting that wasn't even worth much. He yelled at me and accused me of stealing his life from him, said that I was a crook and whatnot. It got to a point where he had to be removed from the video conference by the lawyer so we could end it. He'd have to be there to sign a couple of documents in a few weeks anyway, so I knew that this wasn't over as long as he didn't get what he wanted, but I didn't care. I knew that I deserved all of this and that I'd worked hard for it. It hadn't just all been handed to me, but I'd earned it. Throughout college, I would make sure to teach my grandma all she needed to know, and sometimes we'd even end up on calls at odd hours so that she could consult with me before making any financial decisions. So I was not only keeping my grades up, but I was also working on keeping the business up and running. I was also running the social media page along with a couple of interns I'd hired, so I'd been working for the business right from my college days. I'd earned every bit of this, and yet that didn't seem to be good enough for him. I wasn't worried at the time, but 3 days back, my dad came by to visit me, and it was a very emotionally charged reunion for us. He'd come back for the signing of certain documents that we were already done with, so we didn't need to be there. He told me that he'd come to visit me right after meeting with the lawyer, and even though my grandma's attorney refused to tell him about my inheritance, he'd figured out that I'd inherited the business and the house. While he was at the door, he told me that he just wanted to talk and clear the air because it had been a long time since he left. He didn't want our relationship to get worse and worse with time, so I decided to have a discussion with him once and for all so we could clear the air or whatever. Most of whatever he said just sounded like excuses, and I wasn't too touched by it. He was in a bad space and was still struggling to do well at work. He wanted a fresh start without any reminders of his past. He was really stressed out and stuff, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't the struggle story he thought it was, and it definitely didn't excuse him for whatever he'd done. I was just waiting for him to get that story over with when he told me that now that he was back, he wanted to join me and come on board as an investor or maybe even a co-owner. I said no without even thinking about it because there was just no way that it was happening, not after he literally abandoned me and my grandma and didn't even bother to contact us ever after that. He'd let me and my grandma down on multiple occasions and had never once stepped up to be the father that I deserved or the son that she deserved. So now he didn't just get to hop on the bandwagon and piggyback on what was supposed to be my success. I told him that I wasn't okay with that, and if that's really what he was here for, then he could just leave because it was never going to happen. He could save his breath instead of trying to convince me, but he went on to get annoyed and tried to make it seem like that's not all he was here for. He even said that he genuinely wanted to reconcile with me and rebuild our relationship, but he'd blown his cover already, so I wasn't going to fall for any more of what he was saying. I didn't even want to hear him out, but he went on and on about how I was overreacting and he just wanted to help. At one point, I told him that if he didn't leave then I would call the police, and he flared up at that. He called me ungrateful and of course he played the mom card and told me that my mother would have hated this. I didn't even care and told him that if my mom was around, then maybe he would have still stuck around, but unfortunately I kind of grew up without either parent and it was mostly my grandparents who raised me. So if I owe anyone anything, it was them and not him. He always just did the bare minimum for us and thought that it was all right, so now he could expect the bare minimum in return too. That seemed to shut him up for a while, but I could see that he was getting all teary, and that made me really uncomfortable because my dad hardly cries. I've literally never seen my dad cry ever, not even when his dad passed away, and they were pretty close. So his crying was a huge deal because he was mostly a stoic guy. I took a step back at that moment, and he told me that I had no right to that business because at the end of the day it was his father who had built it for him, and now I just swooped in and stolen it all away from him. Then he walked out, and I could actually hear him crying as he walked away. It's been 3 days and I can't help but think that maybe what he said was true. This business had been intended by my grandfather to be taken over by my father eventually, but he rejected it, and so this came to me. The least I can do is make him a partner in the business, but if there's no trust, then there's no point. I don't understand what to do. AITA for refusing to let my dad join me in the business my grandfather left us after he abandoned me and my grandmother for 6 years? Update 1. Hello, so I've decided to stick to my previous decision of not letting my father join me in the business. He rejected it first when it had been offered to him, and then went MIA for 6 years, which is when my grandma and I handled it all. He doesn't deserve this, and I know that now. Besides, I also found out that he has literally no credibility in the market at this point. I had people do some digging on him, and we found out that he's most definitely living off of his wife's money at the moment because both the businesses he'd been involved in the past had failed. One of them had been a seafood restaurant chain that lasted for a couple of years but then eventually had to be shut down after facing a lot of losses. And then 2 years ago, he tried to get into the food industry again with another product idea, which also didn't work and shut down relatively faster. His wife's some biggie in the corporate world and is the CFO of her dad's company, which finally helped me make sense of why my dad was so willing to dance to her tunes back when they were dating. I'm sure that even if he wanted to invest or buy out part of our business, he'd do it with her money because I highly doubt he has any of his own at this point. After 2 failed businesses in 6 years, it seems unlikely. And I'm sure that joining me was his last attempt at making something of his own, so he could stop living off of his wife's wealth. Too bad it's not happening because we're doing just fine without him and his money, and more importantly, if I can't trust him on a personal level, then I don't think I'd be willing to involve a person like that in my business that my grandma and I have worked so incredibly hard to revive. I'm glad that I posted about it here because a couple of the comments were really brutal with the reality check. Ha! I was allowing him to gaslight me into believing that he had any right over the business now after he'd sold his shares so long ago. All that emotional manipulation almost got to me, but I'm lucky I didn't break. So anyway, that's not happening anymore, and I hope he doesn't come back to try and change my mind either. Update 2. Hey everyone, my dad flew back to NYC last Monday, and today's Wednesday, so a significant amount of time has passed since he left, but unfortunately, he's still holding out hope that maybe I'll let him become a partner or something. He texted me from a number I didn't have saved so he could talk to me without getting blocked yet again. He asked me if I reconsidered my stance on his proposal, and when I said no, he replied by saying that I was being unreasonable and that this would only help my business grow exponentially. I don't think that's true in the first place, and even if it was, I still wouldn't let him come on board. I have zero trust in him, and I don't respect him as a person. I texted him these exact things to let him know just how much I didn't want him as a business partner. I also told him that I was aware of his failed businesses in the past and that he depended on his wife to fund him, so technically it wasn't even his money that I was refusing, it was his wife's. The bottom line was that no matter how much he offered, he was not going to be made a partner in the business, and neither could he join as an investor. He had put in no time or hard work, so the entitlement to expect this from me was ridiculous. I blocked him after saying that, and he hasn't been able to contact me since, although I did notice that he was typing something when I blocked him. I really don't want to find out what it was that he was saying because I have no interest in no time to talk to him. I'm done with this situation and I just wish he'd let it go too. Update 3. So I'm not entirely sure, but I think the drama regarding my dad and the business is over now. I didn't do anything, though. It was all him. He made the mistake of spamming my comments with thief, crook, and tons of bad reviews, none of which were true, of course. My business depends heavily on word of mouth, so this was really bad for me, and my dad was well aware of it, which is why he did this. It just proved what a huge gold digger and selfish jerk he was, because if he had any respect for his father at all, he wouldn't have tried to sabotage me and the business he built from the ground up. So I filed a case against him for trying to defame me, and that was enough for him to back off, probably because his wife wasn't going to tolerate it and they had a lot to lose if I chose to go public with that information. I've also filed a petition for a protective order against him. I don't know what's going to happen with it, though, but he had been harassing me online, and I'm sure it would have gone on for a long time if I hadn't initiated legal action against him. Anyway, this is where it ends, hopefully. I'm doing great, and even though I do miss my grandma sometimes, I know she'd be proud of me and how far I've come. How far both of us have come, actually. Thank you for being there for me throughout this, because even though you guys don't realize it, Reddit has sort of become a safe space for me during these past few days. Venting to you guys helped me keep my head straight, and I couldn't be more thankful for it. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Found out that my fiancée was texting her ex a month before our wedding. So I ghosted her, canceled everything, and went on our trip alone. Then she showed up, begging to win me back. Hello, everyone. I, 26M, have been engaged to a woman, 27F. I want to call her Beach, but let's call her Ellie. We are supposed to be married next month, and moments ago, I found her sexting with her ex. It's hurting so much. Okay, so I've been seeing this woman for over 4 years. Last summer, she brought up the topic of getting married. Honestly, I was taken aback. Not that I was not serious, but the thought of marriage didn't cross my mind. But when she talked about it, I was like, why not? I loved her. We have known each other for 5 years, dating for 4. The next move was definitely marriage for me. So we planned a spring wedding this year. This new year, I bought her a ring to call it official. She too gave me a ring on Valentine's. I thought everything was perfect until it's not. I cannot imagine she had been doing this at my back. Sorry for spreading this all over. So, I had gone for a 2-day work trip this morning while I'm working from home. We have a common PC at home. Since she works for a bank, she's not allowed to open her personal email on her work laptop. So she uses the home PC most of the time. I have my personal email logged into my office laptop. I also have a tab, so I rarely use the PC. To her bad luck, my laptop crashed, and I had to use the home PC. I logged in through my email and continued with my work. I didn't notice her mailbox was open in another minimized browser. After a while, I see an email popping up with the name Felix. Too tired to invent a fake name, so Felix, if you're reading this, screw you. I knew that Felix was her college sweetheart and her ex. They had been dating throughout their college years. The reason for their breakup she gave me was that he moved back to his country. It was almost after a year of their breakup that we met, and almost after a year of knowing each other, I asked her out. Once, in the initial days of our dating, I was talking about my past relationship, which didn't end well. I asked her how she felt about her past. She told me that they broke up amicably, and she wasn't bitter about her ex at all. I don't know why, but it bothered me for a while, though there was no reason at that time. I asked her if she was still in touch with her ex. She denied. That was the end of the conversation. She didn't give me any reason to pester her on that point. Fast forward to today, I saw Felix's email. I promptly opened it without thinking twice, and oh my God, it made me throw up. It was an endless chain of emails, the most outrageous thing I have ever seen. This beach was talking about how she misses him every day and how she satisfies herself thinking about the wild nights they had. I mostly read her replies than his. It was about sexual pleasures as how she touches herself and how she gets wet just by thinking about him. She describes how she wants to be touched by him. Apparently, she craves how he used to bang her back door. Her exact words were, "My a-hole itches to take you in. It's been ages since someone drilled that hole." I was puking after reading this. One moment I thought, was it really her? Or if the account got hacked or something? But it was a long ongoing thread for months. I can't imagine she's the woman I was madly in love with. Let me tell you, she's a liar. We occasionally go at it, in fact, she's the one who doesn't like it, saying it hurts her. I respect her choices and boundaries and never force her into something that she's not comfortable with. And this shitty complains about her yearning a hole. At this moment, I really want to bang her hard and rough and rip her a hole. 2 days back, she had emailed him, "I don't know why am I even marrying this person when his D is half of yours. LOL. To this, he responds, "Rarful. Poor guy. Could you guys imagine the pain I went through while reading it and even while writing this? I want to bury myself somewhere. How can I possibly face myself that my would-be wife was talking shit about me with her ex without giving me any clue? I'm continuously pinching myself to check if this is actually happening to me or if it's just a bad dream." It's kind of funny that on the same day when she wrote that email, she said to me, "You're too big for me, you know my body so well. Boya, you're so good in bed." This was her exact expression. Men, don't forget these compliments, I tell you. Does this mean she was lying to me? Before this question comes up, let me clarify. There has never been any problem in bed. She says she doesn't have a large appetite and we do it mostly 2 to 3 times a week. She goes for 2 days work trip every 6 months, and she comes horny. I look forward to satisfy her after that. I really don't know what to do or how to react. Should I wait for her to return and have a confrontation before making any decision? Or should I just ghost? Honestly, there's so much rage inside me right now. I feel like smashing everything and burning down the house. I have not spoken to anybody yet, not my family or my friends. I'm getting married next month. What do I even tell these people that my would-be wife was sexting her ex while lying naked with me? I want to chase her down wherever she is, slam the screen on her face and ask her for an explanation. Has anyone been in this kind of situation before? How did you deal with this? Man, I'm freaking out. Edit. I'm turning insane. My emotions are just so volatile. It's like a wave. One moment I think I should wait for her to come. Another moment drives me crazy, and I want to vanish in thin air. Should I? I haven't moved from this chair for the last 2 hours, ever since I discovered the cheating shit. I guess I have wasted enough time just thinking about this situation. It's time for action. Update 1. Hello, thanks fellas. I shut down the PC and then reopened the sub from my phone 6 hours later, and boom, 50+ comments. Sorry for not being able to reply to each one of you, but I want to thank all of you who made an effort to read my mambo-jumbo story and comment. Some of you picked up on me saying I was never engaged. How could I call her my fiancé? I don't know what social structure you guys follow, but in our case, since we were about to get married and we exchanged rings, I considered myself to be engaged. People asking me if there were any red flags? No, hell no. No red flags at all. She was the one who brought up the topic of marriage. In the last 4 years of dating, there was not a single sign or deceit. It was a perfect relationship. That's what she made it look like. That's the reason I was so much in shock. My first relationship also ended with my girlfriend cheating on me, but it wasn't a shocker because she displayed the red flags all open. I caught her cheating at her very first instance. Hence, in this relationship, I always kept my eyes and ears open. Talking about updates, so yeah, like most of you suggested, I ghosted. There was nothing left to be confronted after reading those long threads of emails. I want to thank the user EagleKing47 for a kicker suggestion. I downloaded the email and forwarded it to my phone. Though I didn't need any evidence yet, it never hurts to have it in my back pocket, in case. So I printed it and kept it as a backup. Here comes the action. First, I changed the locks of the house. Called up my manager and told him about the crisis, not in detail, just at the surface level, that I had to call off my wedding. He sort of understood and gave me 2 weeks' time to have my shit together. Packed my stuff, booked a cheap motel for a month. Got a discounted rate because of the long stay. Next, I packed all her stuff and sent it to storage. I kept the storage receipt at the door. She syncs her contacts and photos on her Gmail. I deleted all of them. We had a joint account where we were putting in money for our wedding. I took out my share, which was like 70%. I canceled the venue and got a 50% refund. I canceled all the other bookings like photographer, caterer, etc. Got the refund from most of them. Basically, I utilized those 2 days to its full potential. In these 2 days, she texted and called me as usual, but my ghosting had already started. I didn't block her yet. I wanted to see how she reacts to all these, if at all she figures out. There was a series of messages from her in those 2 days. You know, I lost all my contact from my phone. All the photos are gone. I guess my phone has malfunctioned. Thank God it's backed up at home PC. What's up with you? Are you okay? Why ain't you replying? Why are you mad at me? What happened to you? Why ain't you responding to my calls? She contacted my parents and brother to check if I was fine. They had no clue about all this. Mom immediately called me. I answered her phone and told her not to say a word to Ellie. Just tell her that I didn't respond. I promised her I would come home the next day and explain her everything. She did what I said. The text continued, "Are you safe? Say something. Babe, you're scaring me off. Safe my shit," as if she cares. This went on for 2 days until she arrived home to find the house locked and her key non-functional. I went to my parents and informed them I was calling off the wedding. I told them Ellie had been emotionally cheating on me. That's it, no details. They understood and didn't probe me further. They assured to support me through all means, only if I promised to not harm myself. I said I have crossed that phase. I'm safe in that way. Here's the meaty part. Ellie lost her mind when she saw the house was locked. She got the storage paper at the doorstep. It was signed by me. Quite predicted. She relentlessly bombarded my phone with calls and voicemails. What the hell happened? Are you at home? Why did you do this to me? Did you find someone else? After making fun of me with her ex, she had the audacity to turn it around me and question if I was cheating on her. It was kind of satisfying to see her going through waves of emotions. Her texts and voicemails said so. At one point, she started begging, "Baby, why are you doing this to me? I love you. We're going to get married next month. Whatever issue you have, we can surely resolve." Then another moment she goes, "You're a coward and juvenile son of a bitch. You are no man. You chose to hide. I know you have been effing behind my back." She was projecting her insecurities on me. When she eventually realized that I had deleted her contacts and her pictures and whisked out my share from the joint account, she got crazy. She turned explosive, and that's when I blocked her. She has already hurt me enough. I didn't want to take any more abuses from her. People mentioned in the comments that I dodged a bullet. Indeed, I did. Phew. I've been living at the motel until I figure out what next. Thank God the wedding invite was not out yet. Sending a cancellation would have been another hassle with so many questions and explanations. I haven't got a call from any of her family members, friends, or acquaintances. I have not shown her emails to anyone yet, but I have kept them safe. I have blocked her from everywhere. I have exited all the groups where we are a part of. Thanks for all the comments. Last day I was worse, today is no better, but lighter than that day. I hope to come out of this. Thanks. Update 2. Hello all, it's been a while since then. Starting from where I left. After being denied entry into the house, she thought I was inside. She banged the door and window and only stopped when the angry neighbors came out to shut her up. She then shows up at my workplace. I had predicted her move, hence I took a break. I informed the reception that any visitors who came for me should know that I was on sabbatical for the near future. Ellie left a note for me at the reception. It read, "You can't hide from me, son of a bitch. I'm going to hunt you down and rip you apart." I was flabbergasted at her shamelessness. After what she had done to me, she had the balls to write such things for me. It boiled my blood, and I wanted to hunt down her cheating a hole and rip it apart. But I knew it was her move. She deliberately wrote that. She's a manipulative bitch and knows how to use her words to play with others' emotions. I took a deep breath and talked out myself from this thought. All these were making me crazy. So I called my manager and asked him if I could work remotely instead of sulking in the bed the whole day. He approved it and told me to take the work easy. I worked remotely for a month. The motel was at the remote corner of the town. I intentionally chose a secluded place. I didn't want to see any known faces. After locking myself for a couple of days, I stepped out, roamed around in the nearby woods and an abandoned lake. It was a sort of nature therapy. I thought I was making progress until the wedding day arrived. Not everyone remembered, but some of my close friends and relatives did remember that the wedding was around the corner, and there was no invite. Slowly, I informed my close friends about it. They were equally shocked. None of them saw it coming. My best friend had spent the most amount of time with us. I asked him to tell me honestly if he ever felt that Ellie wanted to ride her ex or in general she was harboring this kind of hate for me. He said he thought her to be a perfect wife material woman. Now I don't know if we are a fool or if she's a player to hide it so well. It was after weeks that I was talking again about that cheater. I thought it would help the remaining bit of me to move on. But no, it made me more miserable. One more thing, we had booked our honeymoon to Alaska. When I was canceling the other wedding stuff, I tried canceling this too. But it was non-refundable. The trip was uninsured, so I left it that way. So I decided to go for it. However, I was worried about Ellie following me here because she too had the details of the trip itinerary. You never know. She could also think of relaxing her mind through this trip. But I had deleted her inbox. Yay. The booking was done by my account, so there's no way for her to access it from her end. So here I am, sitting in a cozy cabin amidst the Alaskan scenic beauty and writing about my miserable life. I hope it ends here and I leave all my worries and insecurities in this dense wood. Update 3. Life is funny. Guess whom do I bump into? Yes, my ex, Ellie. She did follow me here because she couldn't find me anywhere in the city. The encounter was spooky, at least the first 30 seconds. I was loitering around the deserted landscape, and from a distance, I saw a woman approaching me. I didn't think too much about it. As she came near, I realized she was Ellie. It was so funny and frustrating at the same time. What could I do? I cannot run away from her. The only sensible thing to do was walk away. But she ran and stopped me. I said, "I don't want to talk." She kept yelling that she searched for me everywhere in the town, left me a note at my office to pinch on my vulnerability, took a flight to Alaska as a guesswork, only to be confirmed at the hotel that I had checked in. The trip is going to end tomorrow, and yesterday it clicked her that I might be traveling alone on our honeymoon. She called up the airlines and the hotel and gave my details to check if I had canceled the trip. The plan was on. She took a bet, booked the first flight to Alaska, took the details from the hotel about my today's plan, and came chasing me. She ranted this stuff, following me for half a mile. I turned back and said, "I don't care, you need to leave." She said she won't until I hear her side of the story. I said, "I don't need to know more." After a while, I was drained, not only from marching away but from all sorts of emotions flowing down my nerves. I stood and asked her to complete her side of the story. She goes, "How you ghost me like this? We were supposed to be married last week. You cannot do this to us. If there was something bothering you, we could sit and discuss it. Have I ever ignored your feelings? No, right? You cannot break up with me just for this trivial matter. I am turning 28 in 3 months. I need to get pregnant and have a baby before I turn 30. We cannot ruin our plan. You know how much I love you. After everything you did to me, I came so far chasing you to mend things between us." Her last 2 sentences tapped on the wrong nerve. I screamed. "Really? This is what you want to talk about? Gaslight the situation or treat me as the bad guy? You're a narcissistic and self-centered woman. You don't care about anyone but yourself and your stupid life goals of getting married before 28 and having a baby before 30. At what point are you going to talk about your cheating?" She snapped at this. "That's not cheating. I have never met him after college. I have never cheated on you, not even the first base. And with this goes the waterworks." However, that didn't stop me from screaming back at her. Sexting your ex, talking about your sexual fantasy, touching yourself thinking about him, and then telling him that you want to get drilled by him. All of it comes under cheating. Moreover, you mocked me. You lied to him that I don't go backdoor. You're a manipulative beach. You lied to get his sympathy or whatever. This is the sober version of what I actually said to her. She seemed shocked. She was like, "You can't just make things up. I definitely didn't mean those things. You're blowing the stuff out of proportion. You know what I told him is a lie." This a-hole shamelessly winked at me and whispered, "It was just for fun, you know? I was just trying to spice up things between us." I yelled, "How? By mocking me?" She tried to justify herself, but she could not. She basically repeated the same stuff, that she didn't mean anything, it was all a lie, that she loved me and blah blah. I cut her off in between and said I was not interested in any explanation. I have lost all love, respect, and everything for her. It was now that she realized she had seriously screwed up big time. She apologized and pleaded for another chance. Moreover, her request for another chance was on the basis that she never physically cheated on me and that she had invested so many years in this relationship so that she could fulfill her life goals. Marry by 28 and baby by 30. And now I cannot spoil it. She's a psycho. I know she tried to follow me to the resort, but I shooed her away and threatened to report her as trespassers if she tried to break into my cabin. She slumped into the ground, breaking down and howling. I didn't even turn back to check if she was okay. I headed back to the resort. I have an early morning flight back home. I have packed my stuff. The staff would drop me off at the airport in the next 2 hours. I don't think I can sleep. Still, I feel relieved and fresh. Maybe the confrontation and the encounter gave a sense of closure, though I was not seeking it. I guess I can now go back to my home from the motel. Don't think she's ever going to come back. Maybe I'll cancel the lease because the house is too big for a single person. I'll rent a smaller apartment. Maybe I'll continue to journal about my life. Feels good to write down the emotions. Thanks for reading this. Looking forward to stay in touch and contribute to the community. Cheers. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My wife cheated on me with a junkie, so I decided to kick her out, and later on we got divorced. Not that atypical, I'm sure. I'm hoping others can learn from my mistakes. We were married for 19 years, together for 23. When she became aloof and distant, finally declaring that our marriage seemed likely over and that she was on a healing path, AA. While I was broken, engaged in career, doting on family, music making, furniture building, friends, and sports, she was spending increasing amounts of time out of the house to help celebrate a friend's sobriety. Teenage daughter and I were home without mom many nights. Things got increasingly worse, with wife stating she was willing to not file for divorce until daughter went off to college, with occasional vocalized, "What am I thinking? We've built a great life together." Interludes. Finally, after about 5 months of this, I couldn't take it anymore and read her emails. Searched on LoveBang. Confronted her. She asked what I found out. First mistake, told her. Got a new set of lies that conveniently served as the least harmful explanation of my evidence. We only made out once. It was awful. We're just friends. I was crushed, having endured this before with my first wife. I told her she had to end contact with this guy, and we spent the weekend rebonding, or so I thought. Things seemed to be on a healing path, but over the next couple weeks, she started backsliding into the acrimony she had inflicted upon me earlier. She began to urge me to work on my upper chest. I told her that I commuted by bicycle 20 miles a day and was in very good shape. I said I felt fine about my body. Her boyfriend had some big chest I would learn. More night celebrations. I got a phone she had recently upgraded for and did a deep forensics dive. I found very explicit text messages indicating full carnality. Turns out her lover was an opiate junkie she met in AA. 5 feet 8 inches to my 6 feet 2 inches. Bankrupt, estranged from his family, pafaced, poorly educated. I graduated from a top 10 university and was, and currently am, a technology executive making very good money. I was at least relieved that this reinforced my existing knowledge that it was never about me. Reconfronted her. She wanted to know what new information I found. I told her, No, you'll just make up a new set of lies. Tell me everything or get the hell out of my house. Keep in mind, I already know more than you can imagine. It all came spilling out in ugly waves. All the basic sex moves one is driven to in self-destruction. I insisted she write it all out in detail. I confronted her junkie boyfriend at the third-rate hotel he worked in. Blew that shit up. His hotel chain transferred him after I confronted him in the lobby. I told her I would consider the gift of reconciliation, but that she had an enormous amount of work to win back my shattered trust. She seemed grateful for the chance. Second mistake. Should have insisted she move out for some period of time. Unbeknownst to me, teenage daughter had been reading mom's emails and knew all the tawdry details. A couple weeks after the big D-Day, daughter got drunk, dropped some pills, drove a car off the road, miraculously not injuring herself or others as the car flipped, teetering above a rain-swollen creek. Daughter got a huge DWI, was kicked out of National Honor Society, and shamed at school. Mom decided I had to deal with all this because she couldn't. A couple weeks later, my ex had a complete parental breakdown. She screamed at our daughter, "F you, F you, F you. You're the reason I want to get shit-faced drunk." Then she peeled out of the driveway at a high rate of speed to effate my daughter, and I couldn't ponder. Our daughter was extremely upset, as one could imagine. I reassured her that her mother's outburst was completely unacceptable and was about her mother's cognitive and emotional state and not a reflection on her daughter. Mom eventually returned, remorseful but minimizing what she had done. Then a transformation occurred. Where our daughter had been overly angry at her mother, now our daughter knew she couldn't be angry at her mother, as it could lead her mother to suicide, which in the twisted logic of mom's tantrum, would be daughter's fault. So daughter took her otherwise understandable anger out at me. Mom, greatly relieved, fomented her daughter's redirected impulse to be angry at me. Mom encouraged her daughter to see me as the villain and the rightful recipient of rage. An alcoholic mom had to protect her alcoholic ego, and if it meant emotionally manipulating/abusing her own daughter, no problem. This got worse and worse. My wife began to see herself as the real victim in all this, which in perverse hindsight, she actually was. She declared with great relief that, "I've forgiven myself." She would stalk me on internet support groups for victims of infidelity. Third mistake. Telling her about my support systems, where she would find fodder for new screaming arguments. As should be fairly predictable by now, things completely fell apart. When a year into our attempted reconciliation, she erupted in a mocking diatribe about my deepest insecurities and sadness, the place every longtime spouse knows about the other and knows to never exploit. She went there, heartlessly imitating me from moments years prior where I had shared my deepest vulnerabilities. She mockingly went into fake tears and exaggerated self-pity while maniacally cackling at my extreme discomfort. But that was my lightbulb moment, and I now see it as a wonderful and enlightening event. If in this time in which I was offering the gift of an opportunity to win my trust back, she was willing to obliterate all norms of marital decorum to exploit the intimate vulnerabilities I had shared with her, my spouse of some 20 years, in order to vent her misdirected shame, then clearly and irrevocably, she could never ever be trusted again. At that moment, I knew I had to be rid of this cancer. I was now certain I could never trust her again, and I was not willing to be in a relationship with an irredeemably untrustworthy person. Where I had been racked with ambivalence before, I had a calm certainty. The divorce settlement was ugly. I ended up paying her $200,000 to keep the house I had already paid for and keep my pension I had worked 20 years for, even though she worked and made a good salary. I had paid all the household bills, mortgage, car payments, taxes, insurance, food, etc., for the entire marriage. Not sure where all her money went over the years, likely to her junkie boyfriend. Who knows? The saving grace was the house appraiser she and her attorney insisted on ended up lowballing the value of the house by several $100,000. That saved me from real financial ruin, and I got to keep my dream house. A custom-made, high-end home perched on a ridge on 3 wooded acres, high above a beautiful, environmentally preserved river. It's not a huge home, but has a detached recording studio for my music, a woodworking shop, and is the calmest place I've ever been. For years later, Things are much better for my daughter and me. Our relationship is strong again. Although her scars are still vicious and deep, she got into a very competitive college in NYC where she's about to graduate. She tells me how much she appreciates that I never badmouth her mom around her, at least while telling me how stressful it is when her mom curses me and speaks disparagingly about me openly and to anyone who will listen. Now my ex refers to her affair as my cry for help and blames me for not seeing it as such, as she tells her remaining friends. I just slept with this guy a few times in utter delirium. He was too selfish to try to understand my pain. In her telling, it was the sex. She will never understand how minor that is compared to the overall context of complete destruction of trust. When I hear these statements through the grapevine, my overwhelming reaction is one of relief. Now I have an amazing girlfriend who is emotionally confident. My daughter likes her too. What I wish I'd done. 1. A full 180. 2. Demanded a postnup as a symbol of her commitment to reconciliation. 3. Invited her to move out as soon as I had proof of her cheating. What I'm glad I did. 1. Hung in there until I had 100% certainty. 2. Never badmouth mom around our daughter. 3. Found support systems. 4. Confronted her junkie lover. 5. Knew this had nothing to do with me, but only my ex's brokenness. Update 1. A view from the other side of recovery. This post is intended to provide hope to those who are where I was 5 years ago. Some of you may have read my story that I posted last week. It has many typical elements of infidelity: trickle truth, victim blaming, gaslighting, etc. And it had elements of suicide attempts, daughter, and suicide threats, ex-wife to daughter. It was the most horrible time in my life, even more horrible than my first marriage and its infidelity. Yes, I'm fixing my picker. Total Jerry Springer episode. But I wanted to affirm that healing and recovery can and does happen. I can't say I'm without scars. God knows they're deep and still raw. But I'm also loving life and where I am. It took a long time to convert my broken heart through anger to apathy regarding my ex. We had been together almost 25 years. We had a daughter together. We built our dream house together. I had supported her through various medical crises, job crises, and her attempts at recovery from alcoholism. She comforted me when I lost my father very suddenly, and we had built quite a life together. Her family loved me and I loved them in return. Once it was clear, after her affair, that she was unwilling to do the hard work to win my trust back, I pulled the plug. It was very ugly for a few months. My attorney told me I shouldn't move out, so I moved into the loft of my marginally heated outbuilding. No plumbing, but private and peaceful. We negotiated the separation agreement over the next couple months, which would serve as the divorce settlement. Daughter was almost 18, so custody wasn't an issue. Ex wanted everything she could get from me, but fortunately, she and her attorney insisted on an appraiser for the house that seriously undervalued it. I paid $200,000 to remortgage the house and keep my pension. I moved back in the summer of 2016. It had been 6 months since the split, and I started dating around about that time. Too soon in many respects, but my bruised ego really needed some validation after some 24 months of lurid descriptions of what a horrible and undesirable person I was. The person I really started to resonate with was someone I'd known, though not very well, as couple friends. She'd long been divorced from her philandering husband, who was, not ironically, a friend of my now ex. This woman and I hit it off and became exclusive within just a few dates. She is Ivy League smart, beautiful, also a musician, and deeply compassionate. But her most wonderful trait is her emotional confidence. She and I have now been together almost 4 years, and we've not had a fight about anything. Disagreements, sure, but we work it out gracefully. She is in the process of moving in with me in the house I kept. I'm upgrading many things about the house and dagaifying it for my new love. We're both looking at retirement in a few short years. I trust her completely and look forward to growing old with her. She's not the kind of crazy girl. That was my pattern for years. She's the quiet, valedictorian type who is not seemingly competitive unless a Scrabble board is nearby. She's very thoughtful, and my kids, siblings, and 94-year-old mom all think quite well of her. My ex is still fuming and fragile. She talks shit about me to anyone who will listen, including our now adult daughter. I've evolved to the point where hearing that doesn't hurt at all, except on my daughter's behalf. Instead, I hear my ex's anger and perverse victim blaming and feel enormous validation that I did the right thing. I have an overwhelming sense of relief. At the same time, I wish my ex healing and recovery. I've had some schadenfreude at her expense since we split, but that is diminishing as I just want her to get her act together. I'd like to get along with her, not just for our daughter's sake, but because there's a good person deep inside the screwed-up exterior. Pretty deep, but there nonetheless. At the same time, while getting along would be nice, I'm perfectly fine with her wanting zero contact with me about anything. That works too. 5 years out, I feel like I'm in a very good place, with successful children and adorable grandchildren who live next door. I live in a beautiful house and have a deeply supportive partner who encourages me to be my best while loving my flaws as well. Still have some PTSD, but if I'd have been able to see into this future 5 years ago, it would have been inspiring. It does get better, I promise. Update 2, her most important attribute, loyalty. It's been 5-ish years until I called it quits from my cheater wife of 20 years. Mostly healed, but scars remain, especially as they involve our daughter. But one of the enduring ironies, and there are many, is that her number one attribute in my eyes was loyalty. We had differences in certain areas and our marriage wasn't perfect, but I knew she would never ever cheat. She cut off ties with friends who were cheating and brought her into their confidence. She judged cheaters very harshly. She told me if I ever cheated it was over and done. Finest. I took great comfort in this and counterbalanced it to a lot of other negatives in our relationship. Her addictions, her narcissism, her callousness to my feelings. All those things were overlooked because I knew, didn't just believe, I knew, she would never cheat on me. When I found out she did, a whole lot changed. Of course, the searing betrayal, the destruction of my family played out in front of my very eyes, and my sense of safety shattered. But one thing that really rattled me was having the foundational attribute of my attraction to her rendered a joke. The thing she would never do to me, cheat, she did. She did it multiple times. She lied about it. She spent the 6 months of her affair vilifying me, explaining why she was some woke, enlightened spirit at one with the universe, and I was some broken piece of crap. The lies and cruelty with which she betrayed me left me wondering if I can no longer trust her. What exactly do I fall back on? Her beauty? She was pretty, but approaching her mid-50s when gravity gets the best of all of us. Her intelligence? Well, that was a tool by which she devised her subterfuge and trickle truth. Her empathy? Gone. Yes, I gave her a chance to win back my trust. A whole year in fact, and while she failed spectacularly, I was almost relieved since my love had been based perhaps too much on her fierce loyalty. Yes, she went through the motions in that first few months, but over time she rebelled against being cast the bad guy. She announced one day, "I forgave myself," and looked to me to celebrate with her. She slowly changed her story to one in which her affair was a cry for help, and became increasingly angry at me for focusing on my pain instead of hers. I was selfish and fragile. These depictions were pushing me further away until she erupted one day in a mocking diatribe of my deepest vulnerabilities. The deep pain that only a spouse of 2 decades knows is there. She exploited her intimate knowledge of what saddened me deepest and made fun of me, laughing and taunting me. The light bulb, which had been glowing, went white hot. She was willing to destroy any chance at rebuilding my trust just to convince herself I was the bad guy. Of course, I knew all her vulnerabilities and how to devastate her, but I withheld. Later that day, I told her I was done with her. I wanted her to GTFO, and I was seeking a divorce. I gave her every chance in the world, certainly more than she deserved, and she proved herself a demon, untrustworthy. $200,000. I am free of her toxins. Much happier, but also prone to dark images of losing everything in my life. Home, loved ones, job, a haunting for which I am seeking therapy. Thanks for letting me vent. Update 3: Life after infidelity. I wanted to provide a hopeful story to those who need hope. My 2 marriages ended in spousal infidelity, both with kids involved. It was horrible both times. First time after 7 years together, the second after 25. I didn't think I could ever trust again. After lots of therapy, I realized my picker was broken. I was picking women who were beautiful, smart, but ultimately narcissistic, much like my father was. I did a lot of self-reflection and re-entered the dating scene prematurely, but I'm in my 60s and I both wanted to have an experience with a female that was not horrible, as well as strike while I still had game. Through an old friend, I reconnected with an old acquaintance. She turned out to be truly lovely. She's beautiful, Ivy League smart, a fellow musician, a former BS, politically progressive like me, but has a huge heart. She's whatever the opposite of a narcissist is. A compassionate companion, truly non-defensive, and loyal. We've been together 4 years and no arguments. We've disagreed and no topics are off limits. She just has a way of calmly discussing tricky issues and we end up resolving things mutually. She moved in at the start of COVID, and despite the general anxiety of quarantine, it has solidified our commitment. We're going to get married. We've told our children. Now we'll let our aging parents know, then siblings. Our kids are grown and independent. A therapist, an MD, a veterinarian, and a fashion executive, so they made it through the turmoil as well. I write this to let folks know. With time and hope, recovery can not only be achieved, but life can be better than ever. Life gets better. Update 4. 6 years from D-Day. 6 years ago last night, I reconfronted her after she had admitted to some inappropriate making out with a guy, based on my finding incriminating emails. The reconfrontation involved seeing her continuing text dialogue with the guy after the initial confrontation and remorse. I rooted her phone, found all sorts of disgusting, incriminating evidence of her affair with a junkie she met in AA. 6 years ago last night, our daughter was at a friend's house for the evening. I told my now ex, "We have to talk." "What about?" she asked, looking worried. "I just want to make sure I understand what went on between you and Junkie." I stated a bunch of statements she had said in her first micro-confession. Many of these statements I knew were lies, some I figured to be true. "Yes, that's all true," she said with increasing nervousness. Then I said, "I know for a fact that you're lying. Tell me the whole truth or GTFO of this house and don't come back." I was furious. She spat back, "What is it that you think isn't true?" I said, "Oh no, I'm not going to fall for that again. If I tell you what I know, you'll just make up a new set of lies to explain it all. Tell me everything or I will kick you out of this house." She collapsed and spilled most everything. Multiple encounters, oral, coital, many positions, all done in evenings when she was supposedly going out to celebrate an AA buddy's sobriety date. I collapsed in fury, sadness, heartbreak, the full mix of every negative emotion in the human range of feelings, each emotion maxed into the red and all at once. Within a couple days, I went to the hotel he worked for and said to him in the lobby, loudly, "So that's your game, seducing mentally ill married women you meet in AA meetings?" He was moved to another state. He began to make veiled threats to our family. We tried to reconcile. She was good at first, but over time she backslid into the kind of narcissism that drives weak people to alcohol. She spied on me on internet support forums so she could start fights. She threatened suicide to our daughter's face, blaming her for it. Daughter turned all her anger to me, the safe parent. Then, at the 1-year anniversary of D-Day 5 years ago yesterday, she went into a withering diatribe of my deepest vulnerabilities, insecurities about my children and family, mocking me and laughing to see what pain she caused me. That was my EF this moment. I knew back then that time would heal, not completely, but I knew that 5 or so years out, things would be much better. I was right. Things are largely healed between my daughter and me. I paid my ex $200,000 to GTFO and to keep the dream house and my pension. I am engaged to a beautiful, Ivy League smart woman who is emotionally competent. She has a daughter who is a therapist. I have a daughter who is a co-doctor, a veterinarian son, and the aforementioned youngest daughter who is living in NYC working in fashion management. I have 3 grandsons who live less than 20 miles away. My GF and I will retire in a couple years. COVID aside and twilight of my career work hassles aside, life is great and low drama. She is extremely loyal and comfortable with herself. I don't fault myself for giving my ex a second chance. It helps to erase any doubt as to whether or not we could work it out. Of course, she blames me for her cheating because that's what alcoholics do. Whatever. All of this is to say it does get better. Way better. I know a lot of you are going through a tough time, but I promise you, if you hang in there and reach out for help, things get better. Way better. Update 5, a mini rant. Got an email from my ex nearly 5 years after our divorce agreement was finalized. She wants a piece of art that was on the list for her to have, conditional on retrieving it within 60 days. She's 4.5 years late. There's also a condition that we split any medical expenses if we agree on it, but we're not covered by insurance. She continues to present me with bills out of the blue for expenses she thought were covered by insurance that weren't, or going out of network and expecting me to pay for it. I've done so to be a good sport, but now that she's insisting she is entitled to this piece of art, which is quite amazing and was in our state's art museum for a while, I'm asking her about her admission of the medical expenses concurrence and the 60-day window on retrieving her items. Predictably, she blew up and accused me of violating our daughter's 22F HIPAA rights. I'm guessing she wants to get me to pay for mysterious things and not tell me what they're for. Daughter is increasingly telling me about her medical issues, some of which are understandably better suited for the daughter of an OB/GYN, her mom. So I'm keeping the painting. Update 6. She is truly crazy. I know that everybody's ex is crazy. I'm even writing a song with that title. So ex of 5 years and I had a kerfuffle over some items in the signed long ago divorce agreement. She wants a 3.5-year grace on picking up a piece of art, while I wanted to make it contingent on being kept in the loop regarding medical expenses and the depletion of the college fund, as per the agreement. She turned nasty quickly, calling me names and talking mad shit. Whatever. I didn't take the bait. Then, just a few days later, my fiancé brings in the mail and sees something for my ex in the mail. I'm suspicious AF. Fiancé opens it. All it has is 3 photographs from 20 years ago at ex's 40th birthday party. The 3 photographs show me and my now fiancé at the big celebration table. Fiancé was married to a friend of my ex's, so ex invited him and his then wife, now my fiancé, and I, of course, was married to my now ex. My now fiancé and I were acquaintances back then, but not really friends, nor were we putting out any vibe beyond happily monogamous to our respective partners. Neither of us were remotely interested in each other or anyone other than our then spouses. The photos are hardly implicating of anything. In one, we're sipping beverages. In another, I'm looking to one side of the room and now fiancé might be looking at me or the same side of the room I am looking at. In the third, we're largely obscured by a table decoration. There's no note on the pictures. We're pretty sure my ex has convinced herself that these are some sort of smoking gun images of a long-standing affair between us. We didn't even start dating until 6 months after the split, which was a year after the failed reconciliation, which itself was a year after my ex's affair started, and a full 16 years after these pictures. My ex is apparently projecting cheating onto me and my now fiancé. We've had a great laugh over this, although I fear my ex is selling this crazy narrative to our daughter. Regardless, I have a sense of pity that my ex is so deeply narcissistic and self-loathing that she is having to concoct a narrative of victimhood and blame me for the infidelity that she herself perpetrated. My response to all this is no response. Update 7. The goal is not forgiveness. For the newly betrayed, don't think that forgiveness is somehow the ultimate goal. Your betraying partner may push for this, and at some point you may forgive them. But that's not enough and it's not the goal. I forgive my ex for cheating. She was in some sort of narcissistic haze associated with perimenopause. That seems to be her new forever state. I don't excuse it, but I understand she's a effing mess and it definitely screwed her up more than our daughter or me. I don't forgive how she treated our daughter, but that's another issue. The goal, whether folks can stick it out or call it quits, is to trust again. If folks stick it out with a very low success rate, it'll only work if the wayward spouse does the heavy lifting to win back trust. If folks call it quits, the typical outcome, even if reconciliation is attempted, the goal is to be able to trust someone else again, including yourself. Trust is the real casualty, and it is also the ultimate goal of healing. Thoughts? Update 8. I got married this weekend. Twice. I had families destroyed by spousal infidelity. Kids involved, messes galore, hundreds of thousands of dollars lost in legal fees and estate settlements. Thousands invested in therapy for all damaged by it. Nevertheless, this Saturday my beloved girlfriend of 5 years and I had an intimate wedding service before family in the front yard and promised faithfulness, loyalty, and patience for the rest of our lives. It was a beautiful service. My 3 grandsons were the flower boys. They were diligent, but the 2-year-old wandered off to play with the toys he knew were in Grandpa's house instead of scattering flower petals. The minister was a friend of my new wife's, the photographer a friend of mine for 40 years, and a childhood friend of my new wife's helped organize. It was a beautiful, low-humidity, sunny but hot day in North Carolina. I love my life. My new MIL is in the intermediate stages of Alzheimer's, but at least she knew her daughter was getting married to me. So that's good. My new stepdaughter is great. A 30-year-old therapist who is moving with her adorable mathematician boyfriend on a postdoc fellowship. My 3 kids get a stepmom and the grandkids get a new grandmother. Bottom line. For those so inclined, you can find trust again, you can find love, and there are truly warm-hearted people out there. Update 9. I had a visit from my ex yesterday. We've been split for 7 years after a very ugly year-long attempt to reconcile from her affair from a junkie she met in AA after some 20 years of marriage. She was horrible in the run-up to the affair, during the attempted reconciliation, and the 5 years following our split, including poisoning the relationship between our daughter and me. Despite daughter knowing all the details of mom's affair, she was absolutely a horrible, spiteful person during those years. A few months ago, ex had reached out with a mostly conciliatory email after years of little contact. For the sake of our daughter and my own closure, I replied that I was at peace about it all, but I called her out on her false claim of never having badmouthed me to our daughter. Ex responded contritely that, yeah, she had done that and she was sorry. She came over yesterday to fetch some old videotapes of our daughter and of general family history, presumably to convert them to digital format. My new and final wife made sure she was out of the house, although I told her it was fine if she was. Ex and I chatted for some 15 minutes. She was super nervous the whole time, apologetic, and heavy with remorse. I was interested in how her family was doing, since I still care about them. She was embarrassed and apologized for having gone crazy and ruining everything we had. She was happy I found someone who was right for me and was truly sincere. I didn't respond much other than to peacefully nod and give off strong vibes that I had come out the other end relieved and happier than I would have been if we tried to make it work. She looked sad and defeated. When I asked how she was doing, she perked up forcefully and said, "I'm doing great, but it seems she is still struggling." She was looking for affirmation that our 25 years together were not poisoned, and I nodded gently in concurrence that indeed we had some good times together. My body language was relaxed and at peace. She apologized for not being there for me when I was having a biopsy for cancer during her affair. Turned out it was all benign, and began a litany of apologies until she caught herself, and I said it was all okay now. She is still racked with remorse, but my calm reassured her and myself that I was at peace. It was a good meeting. I realized in that moment that my anger about her cheating and our marriage is gone, except for lingering anger at how she's harmed our daughter and our relationship. I felt sorry for her and realized that despite everything I went through, I was the least damaged in the long run compared to her and our daughter. I will admit there was a little bit of implied boasting on my part that my life was truly settled and that I was at peace, but there was nothing forced in my vibe of happiness. No goodbye hugs or anything when she left. I sat for a few minutes to bask in the realization that I've truly healed, even if some scars remain. I tried to forgive earlier for my own sanity, but I realized yesterday that I'm ultimately better off for having suffered all that pain, and that my implied forgiveness is genuine. I just wanted to share this story of triumph with those of you who are in the throes of the pain I was in 7 years ago. That recovery is achievable, and when you finally get there, you might not notice right away. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My sister told my husband to get together sometime without the baggage when I got pregnant, and mom canceled my gender reveal party without telling me to help my cheating sister. I, 31F, was left at a hospital as a newborn. My parents had been trying to have a child for over a decade without success when they decided to adopt. According to my dad, when they first saw me, they knew I was meant to be their daughter. The adoption process took months. Interviews, home inspections, paperwork, but they persevered. I grew up as their only child for several years, surrounded by their love and attention. My paternal grandparents embraced me from day one. They celebrated my birthdays, included me in family traditions, and treated me exactly like their other grandchildren. My father's siblings and their children also welcomed me without question. We spent holidays together, went on camping trips, and maintained close relationships even as we grew older. My maternal grandparents were a different story. They never accepted me as part of the family. During my first Thanksgiving with the extended family, everyone received personalized place cards at the dinner table except me. When I asked my grandmother where I should sit, she pointed to a small folding chair in the corner of the dining room, separate from everyone else. My dad immediately picked me up, grabbed our coats, and we left. My mother stayed behind, saying she would talk to her parents. When we got home, Dad explained that some people have narrow views about what makes a family. He promised that no matter what anyone else thought, I would always be his daughter. The next day, Mom returned and assured me her parents would come around eventually. They never did. When I was 8, my mother unexpectedly became pregnant. The news came as a shock to everyone, including my parents, who had long given up hope of conceiving. Their joy was immediate and obvious. I noticed how my maternal grandparents reacted to the news, calling it a miracle, and suddenly becoming more interested in visiting our home. I started having nightmares about being sent back to the hospital. One morning after waking up crying, my parents sat me down and assured me that I would always be their first daughter. Dad emphasized that family isn't about blood but about love. Mom suggested I could help decorate the nursery and become a big sister. The idea of having a sibling eventually grew on me. Hannah was born in spring. I remember standing on my tiptoes beside the hospital bed to see her tiny face. Dad lifted me up so I could get a better look, and Mom showed me how to support her head properly when holding her. For the first few years, Hannah followed me everywhere. She wanted to wear the same clothes, play the same games, and sit beside me during meals. I taught her how to tie her shoes and ride a bike. Something changed after Hannah turned 5. My maternal grandparents began taking her for weekend visits without me. When she returned, she would look at me differently and avoid playing with me. Once, while coloring together, she suddenly asked, "Is it true you're not really my sister?" I didn't know how to respond and told Mom about it later. She dismissed it as a misunderstanding and said she would talk to Hannah. The incidents started small. My homework assignments disappeared from my backpack. My favorite sweater went missing before school picture day. When I mentioned these things to my parents, they suggested I was becoming forgetful or disorganized. Then I noticed my toothbrush was wet every morning. Even though I hadn't used it yet, I started keeping it in my bedroom instead of the bathroom. One day after school, I found Hannah in my room applying my new makeup all over her face, on the carpet. When I asked what she was doing, she smirked and continued rubbing eyeshadow into the rug. I called for Mom, who came upstairs and gasped at the destruction. Nearly $200 worth of products I had saved for months to buy were ruined. "I was just playing," Hannah said. Mom sighed and told me not to overreact about just makeup, while helping Hannah clean her face. When I pressed further, Hannah finally admitted, between sobs, that she had also been the one taking my things and using my toothbrush to clean the toilet. Mom seemed shocked and asked her why. "Grandma says she's not really my sister," Hannah blurted out. "She says Sophie doesn't belong in our family and gets too much attention. Grandma says you and Dad spend too much money on her when it should be saved for me." Mom paled and immediately called Hannah's grandparents. I couldn't hear the conversation, but afterward, Mom explained that her parents were old-fashioned and that Hannah shouldn't listen to everything they said. She promised to limit Hannah's unsupervised visits with them. Dad wanted to cut contact completely when he found out, but Mom convinced him that would be too extreme. Despite Mom's promises, nothing really changed. Hannah continued visiting our grandparents alone, and her behavior toward me worsened. By high school, she openly mocked my appearance in front of my friends. She accidentally spilled drinks on my homework and borrowed clothes without permission, returning them damaged. Dad consistently defended me and disciplined Hannah, while Mom made excuses for her behavior. "She's just going through a phase" became Mom's standard response. Meanwhile, I withdrew and focused on academics, spending more time with my friends and less time at home. When I left for college, things improved simply because of distance. I visited during holidays but otherwise stayed on campus, working part-time and focusing on my degree. After graduation, I moved to a different city for a job opportunity and only saw my family during major holidays. During one Thanksgiving visit, I brought my boyfriend, Thomas, to meet everyone. Hannah, then 20, spent the entire evening touching his arm while talking, sitting unnecessarily close to him on the couch, and asking if he wanted to see her apartment. When Thomas excused himself to use the bathroom, Hannah followed him into the hallway. Later, Thomas told me she had slipped him her phone number and suggested they get together sometime without the baggage. When I confronted her, she laughed and said, "Don't be so sensitive. It's not like he's anything special." Dad overheard and demanded Hannah apologize. She refused, saying I was overreacting as usual. Mom stayed silent throughout the exchange. Thomas and I left early, and after that I limited my visits even further. 2 years ago, my maternal grandparents organized a family cruise to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. Every family member received an invitation except me. Dad immediately declined to attend, which sparked an argument between my parents. Hannah accused Dad of always taking Sophie's side and insisted he should come without me, since I probably wouldn't want to be trapped on a boat with the family anyway. Dad held firm in his decision. Mom and Hannah went on the cruise without him. Afterward, Hannah posted dozens of photos tagged "Real Family Vacation" and "Blood is thicker than water." I blocked her on social media after that. Through therapy and the support of Thomas, now my husband, I gradually learned to set boundaries. When Hannah made snide comments about my career, house, or relationship, I responded firmly instead of withdrawing. This clearly surprised her, as she was used to me staying quiet. During one family dinner, when she remarked that my promotion was probably due to affirmative action for orphans, I replied that at least I had a career path, unlike someone who had changed majors 3 times and still worked part-time at a mall kiosk. She stormed out, and Mom followed to console her. Dad and I finished dinner alone, and he told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself. That night, I overheard my parents arguing about Hannah's behavior and Mom's continued defense of it. 5 months ago, I discovered I was pregnant. Thomas and I had been trying for almost a year, so the news brought us immense joy. We told my parents over dinner, and they reacted with excitement. Even Mom seemed genuinely happy. Dad immediately started making plans to convert his home workshop into a nursery for when we visited with the baby. Hannah, meanwhile, had married a man named Parker 2 years ago in a ceremony I wasn't invited to attend. From what I gathered through family conversations, their relationship had always been rocky. Hannah frequently complained about Parker to Mom, who then relayed these issues to me, despite my lack of interest in Hannah's marital problems. Last month, I decided to host a gender reveal party, just a small gathering with close friends and family where we would cut into a colored cake. Thomas's parents were flying in for the occasion, and my father's side of the family had all confirmed their attendance. My mother initially offered to help with preparations but became increasingly distant as the date approached. 3 days before the party, Mom called. Her voice sounded strange as she explained that Hannah was going through a difficult time and had moved back home temporarily. According to Mom, Parker had misunderstood a situation and was now filing for divorce. Given these circumstances, Mom suggested that I postpone my gender reveal party, as it would be insensitive to celebrate while Hannah was suffering. I explained that invitations had been sent, people were traveling to attend, and the bakery order was confirmed. Moreover, my pregnancy had nothing to do with Hannah's marital problems. Mom became insistent, saying family should support each other during crises and that I was being selfish by proceeding with my plans. "Hannah needs everyone's support right now," she said. You can always have your party later when things settle down. I refused to cancel, suggesting that if Hannah felt uncomfortable, perhaps she and Mom could skip the event. This response apparently offended Mom, who hung up after saying I had always lacked empathy. The morning of the party, I received a group text from Mom addressed to all guests. She explained that due to a family emergency, my gender reveal party was canceled until further notice. She apologized for the inconvenience and promised updates about rescheduling. I had received no prior notification of this decision. When I called Mom, she arrived at my house 30 minutes later, explaining she had saved me from embarrassment. According to her, celebrating a pregnancy while Hannah was dealing with divorce would appear tasteless to extended family. She described my gender reveal as a trivial event that could easily be postponed to accommodate Hannah's emotional needs. For the first time in my life, I asked my mother to leave my house immediately. She seemed shocked by my reaction and attempted to justify her decision further, but I opened the front door and waited silently until she left. Thomas came home early from work after I called him. While explaining what happened, I received a text from Hannah telling me to stop being a drama queen about a stupid party and to consider how difficult her life was right now. She added that Mom was just trying to protect the family's reputation and that I should keep certain details private. That evening, I learned from my father that Hannah's divorce was not due to a misunderstanding, as Mom had claimed. Parker had returned home early from a business trip and found Hannah in bed with her former college boyfriend. Dad had only recently discovered the truth himself and was furious with both Hannah for her infidelity and Mom for misrepresenting the situation. After consulting with Thomas, I composed an email. I addressed it to everyone who had been invited to the gender reveal party, explaining that contrary to my mother's message, I had not agreed to cancel the event. I detailed how Mom had taken this action without my knowledge or consent because Hannah was going through a divorce after being caught cheating on her husband. I ended by announcing that the gender reveal would be rescheduled and hosted by Thomas's parents at their home the following weekend, and that my mother and sister were not welcome to attend. Within minutes of sending the email, my phone began ringing with calls from Mom and Hannah. I silenced it and went to bed. The next morning, I had 17 voice messages and over 30 texts demanding I fix this situation and send a retraction email claiming my previous message was sent in anger and contained fabrications. I did not respond to any of these communications. Instead, Thomas and I proceeded with planning the rescheduled event with his parents. My father called to say he fully supported my decision and would attend the new party. He also mentioned that things at home had become increasingly tense, with Hannah blaming me for ruining her reputation and Mom torn between defending Hannah and recognizing the inappropriateness of canceling my event. The rescheduled gender reveal party took place without incident. We discovered we were having a girl. Thomas's family, my father, and friends from both sides created a warm, supportive atmosphere. Several of my cousins from my father's side attended and expressed their disappointment in my mother's actions. A week later, Dad called to tell me that Hannah's ex-boyfriend, the one she had been caught with, was actually married with 2 children. His wife had discovered the affair and contacted Parker with evidence dating back months. The situation had become public knowledge among their social circle, and Hannah blamed me entirely for exposing her initial infidelity, claiming I had ruined her chance at reconciliation with Parker. Furthermore, Dad had given Hannah an ultimatum: either find her own apartment or commit to therapy and apologize to me. Hannah chose to move out, apparently staying with friends temporarily while accusing Dad of picking the adopted kid over his real daughter. Mom has attempted to contact me several times, though her messages focus primarily on how I've damaged her relationship with Hannah rather than acknowledging how her actions hurt me. She maintains that canceling my party was the right decision given the circumstances, and that I overreacted by exposing Hannah's infidelity. Dad visits regularly now, sometimes staying for dinner and helping Thomas prepare the nursery. He recently mentioned that while he and Mom are still together, their relationship has been strained by these events. He doesn't anticipate divorce but has made it clear to Mom that her treatment of me over the years has damaged their marriage. As for me, I've decided to limit contact with both Mom and Hannah going forward. I don't want my daughter exposed to the same dynamics I experienced growing up. Thomas fully supports this decision. My due date is approaching quickly. Thomas and I have completed childbirth classes and finalized the nursery. We've chosen a name but are keeping it private until she's born. Dad has already purchased a small bookshelf and filled it with children's books for his future granddaughter. Update 1. It's been 6 weeks since my last post. My daughter, Lily, was born 2 weeks ago. Healthy and perfect in every way. The birth went smoothly, and we came home after 2 days in the hospital. Thomas took paternity leave and has been incredible with night feedings and diaper changes. Dad was our first visitor at the hospital. He brought a handmade wooden music box that plays a lullaby when wound. He sat in the hospital chair, holding Lily for hours. Thomas's parents arrived the next day with more practical gifts: diapers, wipes, and freezer meals. Mom showed up unannounced on our 3rd day home. She brought an expensive designer outfit for Lily, size 6 to 12 months, not newborn, and acted as if nothing had happened between us. She attempted to take Lily from my arms without asking, insisting she knew better how to hold a baby since she'd actually given birth. Thomas intervened and suggested Mom should have called before visiting. She left shortly after, texting later that I had turned my husband against her. Hannah has not reached out directly but sent a generic congratulations card with no personal message. According to Dad, she's been staying with our maternal grandparents, who continue to criticize my vendetta against the family. They did not acknowledge Lily's birth. My paternal grandparents, now in their 80s, made the journey to meet their great-granddaughter. My grandmother brought the baby quilt she had made for me when I was adopted, freshly cleaned and restored. She told me she had always saved it, hoping I would use it for my own child someday. Dad mentioned that Mom has been attending individual counseling at his insistence. She apparently recognizes some problematic patterns in her relationship with Hannah but still struggles to understand my perspective. He recognizes that years of enabling Hannah's behavior won't change overnight. Thomas returns to work next month. My company offers remote work options for new parents, so I'll be working from home part-time starting in a few weeks. We found a daycare for when I return to the office, though that won't be until Lily is at least 6 months old. For now, we're establishing our new routine as a family of 3. Thomas's mother visits weekly to help with laundry and meal prep. Dad comes by every few days, always calling first to check if it's convenient. Update 2:4 months have passed since Lily's birth. She's growing quickly and recently started rolling over. Her smile lights up the room, especially when she sees her grandfather or Thomas return from work. Last month, I received an unexpected email from Parker, Hannah's ex-husband. He thanked me for being honest about the circumstances of their divorce, explaining that Hannah and my mother had been spreading a narrative that he was abusive and unfaithful. My email to the family had inadvertently cleared his name among mutual acquaintances. He wished me well with my new family and apologized for any stress the situation had caused during my pregnancy. 2 weeks ago, Mom showed up at our door again, this time with Hannah. They wanted to clear the air and meet Lily properly. Hannah immediately commented that Lily looked nothing like me, with an odd emphasis that felt intentional. Mom nudged her and gave a forced smile. The visit was tense. Hannah spent most of the time on her phone while Mom tried to make conversation about neutral topics. When Lily began fussing, Hannah remarked, "She's so whiny. I guess that runs in your side," looking directly at me. Thomas, who had been giving them a chance out of respect for family reconciliation, immediately stood up and suggested it was time for them to leave as Lily needed her nap. After they left, we received a group text from Mom claiming we had been hostile and unwelcoming during what was meant to be a peacemaking visit. She demanded an apology for Thomas's rude behavior in asking them to leave. We did not respond. Dad later informed us that Hannah has been dating her former college boyfriend, the married man, openly since his divorce finalized. Our maternal grandparents apparently see nothing wrong with this relationship, despite how it began. Dad seems increasingly frustrated with the situation but maintains contact with Mom and Hannah while keeping firm boundaries. Thomas and I have decided to move forward with buying a house in a neighboring town with better schools. The commute will be longer for both of us, but the community has excellent educational programs and more family-friendly amenities. Dad has already offered to help with the move and renovations to the new place. My relationship with Mom and Hannah remains distant. They send occasional texts about mundane matters but never acknowledge the underlying issues. I respond politely but briefly to Mom and rarely engage with Hannah at all. This arrangement, while not ideal, seems the most manageable for maintaining my well-being and focusing on Lily's needs. Update 3. Lily just turned 1 year old. We celebrated with a small party at our new house. Dad helped Thomas set up a swing set in the backyard as Lily's birthday present. My paternal grandparents sent a package of children's books and a savings bond for her education. Thomas's family drove up for the weekend and stayed in our newly finished guest room. Mom sent a gift but didn't attend, claiming she had a prior commitment. I later learned from my cousin that Mom had posted photos of herself at a spa that day. Hannah sent nothing and made no acknowledgement of Lily's birthday. 2 significant developments have occurred in the past few months. First, Dad has moved out of the family home and into his own apartment. He explained that after multiple failed attempts at couples counseling, he realized the marriage had become irreparably damaged. The final straw came when he discovered Mom had been secretly sending money to Hannah to fund a cosmetic procedure while claiming they couldn't afford to fix the roof leak in their house. He emphasized that his decision wasn't solely about my situation with Mom and Hannah, but rather the culmination of decades of similar patterns. Second, Hannah announced her engagement to her former boyfriend, the previously married man. They planned to marry at an expensive resort next summer, with our maternal grandparents covering most costs. Hannah called me directly for the first time in years, not to reconcile, but to inform me that I would not be receiving an invitation. She explained this was because my presence would make her uncomfortable on her special day. I wished her well and ended the call. Mom contacted me afterward, insisting I should be more supportive of Hannah, despite not being invited to the wedding. She suggested I send an expensive gift as a gesture of goodwill. When I declined, explaining that I wouldn't send a gift to an event I wasn't welcome to attend, she accused me of being petty and holding grudges. Dad visits twice weekly, sometimes staying for dinner or taking Lily to the park. He's rented a 2-bedroom apartment so that when Lily grows up, she has her own space when she stays with him. Thomas and Dad have developed their own friendship, often working on house projects together or watching sports after Lily goes to bed. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Wife ignored my rules and let her unemployed. Freeloading sister steal my Stratocaster, a family heirloom. We threatened to sue, and now our marriage is on the line. Throwaway account because my wife uses Reddit, and this is, well, let's just say it's a situation. I, 58M, have been married to Diana, 56F, for 25 years. We have what I've always considered a very solid marriage. We communicate well, we respect each other, and we've built a comfortable life together. But her younger sister, Wendy, 52F, has always been a persistent source of friction, and a recent incident has brought things to a head. I genuinely need to know if I'm being unreasonable in my reaction. Diana and I met in our early 30s. I was already a few years into my career as an accountant, a job I enjoy for its structure and predictability. Numbers make sense to me. People sometimes not so much. Diana was, and still is, a teacher elementary school. She has the patience of a saint, which is probably why she puts up with me and, frankly, why she puts up with Wendy. Our backgrounds were fairly similar. We both grew up in middle-class families. My parents were incredibly practical, down-to-earth people. They weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but they were incredibly responsible with their money. They instilled in me the importance of saving, of avoiding unnecessary debt, of living within your means. I remember my dad always saying, "Money doesn't grow on trees, son." Whenever I'd asked for something extravagant as a kid, it wasn't said harshly, but it was a constant reminder of the value of hard work and financial prudence. They scrimped and saved for years to buy a small, modest cottage by the lake. It wasn't much, but it was their dream, and they achieved it through careful planning and discipline. Diana's family, however, well, they were a different story. Her parents, who are both deceased now, were always chasing the next big thing, the next get-rich-quick scheme. They'd invest in volatile stocks, start businesses they knew nothing about, and generally treat money like it was water flowing through their fingers. They were constantly in debt, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, as the saying goes. It created a lot of instability and stress in their household, from what Diana has told me. And Wendy, Diana's younger sister, unfortunately, seems to have inherited all of their worst financial habits and none of their few redeeming qualities. She's never been able to hold down a steady job for more than a few months at a time. She drifts from one temporary position to another, always full of her potential and her entrepreneurial spirit, but never actually following through on anything. She has these elaborate fantasies of being a successful businesswoman, a fashion designer, a famous chef, or you name it. She's probably dreamed of it. But she lacks the discipline, the work ethic, and frankly, the basic common sense to make any of those dreams a reality. Diana, thankfully, is the complete opposite of her sister. She's grounded, responsible, and incredibly thoughtful. We've always been on the same page when it comes to finances. Early in our marriage, we decided to have a joint account for shared expenses and separate accounts for our individual spending. It's a system that's worked beautifully for us for 25 years. It allows us both a degree of independence while still ensuring that our shared financial responsibilities are met. We've built a comfortable life for ourselves, not extravagant, but secure. We've saved diligently for retirement, and we're on track to be able to live comfortably without financial worries. This security is something I value immensely, probably because of my parents' influence. But Wendy is a constant source of tension. Over the years, Diana has lent her sister money on countless occasions. Small amounts at first, then larger and larger sums. It's always the same story. Wendy is in a temporary bind. She needs a little help to get back on her feet. She promises to pay it back as soon as possible. Of course, as soon as possible never seems to arrive. I'd estimate that over the past 2 decades, Diana has lent Wendy thousands of dollars, and I'd be surprised if she's seen more than a few hundreds repaid. I've always tried to be understanding. I know family is important to Diana, and I respect that. I've never forbidden her from helping her sister, but I have gently, and sometimes not so gently, encouraged her to set some boundaries. I've pointed out repeatedly that enabling Wendy's irresponsible behavior isn't actually helping her in the long run. It's just perpetuating a cycle of dependence. The first truly significant incident that directly involved me occurred about 10 years ago. Wendy, in one of her fleeting moments of entrepreneurial ambition, decided she wanted to open a luxury pet grooming business. Now, Wendy has never owned a pet, has no training in animal care, and has absolutely no experience running a business of any kind. But she was convinced this was her ticket to riches. She needed a substantial loan to get started, and she asked Diana to co-sign it. Diana was seriously considering it. She wanted to support her sister, to believe in her, to give her a chance. I, however, put my foot down and hard. I explained to Diana in no uncertain terms that co-signing the loan would make us legally responsible for the entire debt if Wendy defaulted, which, given her history, seemed almost inevitable. I painted a very clear picture of the potential consequences. It was a difficult conversation. Diana was upset with me, accusing me of being unsupportive and not understanding the importance of family loyalty. She argued that Wendy just needed a break, a chance to prove herself. I countered that we had already given her countless chances and that this was far too risky. We went back and forth for days. Finally, Diana relented. She saw the logic in my argument, even if she didn't like it. She told Wendy she couldn't co-sign the loan. Wendy, predictably, was furious. She accused me of being controlling and manipulative, of deliberately sabotaging her dreams. She laid a massive guilt trip on Diana, claiming that I didn't believe in her and that Diana was choosing me over her own sister. The pet grooming business, unsurprisingly, was a complete disaster. It closed down within 6 months, leaving Wendy even deeper in debt. And of course, she never apologized to Diana or me. She simply moved on to the next scheme, the next big idea. Fast forward to about 6 months ago. My uncle, my father's brother, passed away. He was a lifelong bachelor, a musician, and a genuinely kind soul. He left me his most prized possessions, a collection of vintage guitars. These weren't just any guitars. They were collector's items, some of them dating back to the 1960s. There was a beautiful old Gibson acoustic, a classic Fender Telecaster, and the crown jewel, a 1967 Fender Stratocaster in pristine condition. To me, these guitars were far more than just musical instruments. I remember visiting him as a child and being mesmerized by the sounds he could create with those guitars. He'd let me strum them carefully, showing me how to hold them, even though I had absolutely no musical talent. When I inherited the collection, I knew I had to protect them. I converted our spare room into a small home office/music room. I installed a high-quality security system, including a reinforced door with multiple locks. I even had humidity control installed to keep the guitars in optimal condition. I rarely allowed anyone into that room, not even Diana. It wasn't that I didn't trust her. It was simply that those guitars were incredibly precious to me, and I wanted to minimize any risk of damage or, God forbid, theft. Then, about 6 months ago, Wendy hit another one of her rough patches. She lost her latest job, something about a personality conflict with her manager, which, knowing Wendy, probably meant she'd been insubordinate or unreliable. She was facing eviction from her apartment and naturally turned to Diana for help. Diana, being the compassionate person she is, offered to let Wendy stay with us for a few weeks while she got back on her feet. I was extremely hesitant. My gut feeling was that this was a terrible idea, but I also knew how much it meant to Diana to help her sister. So I reluctantly agreed, but with very clear rules. I sat down with Diana and Wendy and I laid down the ground rules. I told Wendy that she was welcome to stay in our guest room, that she was expected to respect our privacy, that there would be absolutely no borrowing money, and most importantly, that she was under no circumstances to enter my office/music room. I made it crystal clear that the room was off-limits, that it contained valuable and irreplaceable items, and that I would not tolerate any violation of that boundary. Wendy, of course, agreed to everything. She looked me straight in the eye and promised to abide by the rules. For the first couple of weeks, things were surprisingly calm. Wendy kept to herself, mostly staying in the guest room. She made a few half-hearted attempts to find a job, but nothing materialized. I tried to avoid interacting with her as much as possible, not out of rudeness, but because I simply didn't trust her. Then, one afternoon, I came home from work early. I'd been feeling under the weather, a nasty headache, and a general feeling of unease. I decided to go upstairs and lie down for a bit. As I walked past my office, I heard a faint noise, a sort of strumming sound. My heart sank. I knew instantly that something was wrong. I slowly opened the door, and there she was, Wendy, standing in the middle of my office, holding the Stratocaster. She was clumsily trying to play it. I was stunned. I felt a surge of anger. I managed to keep my voice relatively calm. "Wendy," I said, "what do you think you're doing?" She jumped, startled, and nearly dropped the guitar. She stammered, "Oh, I was just looking. So beautiful. I was just admiring it." "Admiring it?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "You were playing it, and you're in my office, which I specifically told you was off limits." She tried to backtrack, to downplay the situation. "I just wanted to see it up close. I wasn't going to hurt it." "Put it down," I said, my voice firm. "Put it down now, and get out of my office." She reluctantly placed the guitar back in its stand, looking sheepish and avoiding eye contact. I watched her leave, then I closed and locked the door behind her. I immediately inspected all the guitars, checking for any scratches or damage. Thankfully, everything seemed to be in order, but I was still incredibly shaken. This was a clear violation of my trust. I told Diana what had happened as soon as she got home from work. She was apologetic. She promised she'd talk to Wendy, that she'd make sure it never happened again. A week later, I had to go out of town for a business trip. It was a short trip, just 3 days, but I was apprehensive about leaving Wendy alone in the house. I reiterated to Diana before I left the importance of keeping Wendy out of my office. Diana assured me that she understood and that she would be vigilant. When I returned from the trip, everything seemed normal at first. Diana greeted me at the door, and we chatted about my trip, about her week at school. But I noticed something was off. She was fidgety, avoiding direct eye contact, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced with nervousness. Finally, after dinner, she confessed. While I was away, Wendy had approached her with another one of her sob stories. She claimed she had a gig, a chance to play music at some local bar or event. She needed a good guitar to play, she said, and she'd asked Diana if she could borrow one of mine. Diana, feeling pressured and, I suspect, guilty about the previous incident, had agreed. But she insisted she had only given Wendy permission to take one guitar, the least valuable one, an acoustic guitar I rarely played. She had specifically told Wendy not to touch the Stratocaster or any of the other electric guitars. My heart sank. I went straight to my office, unlocked the door, and my worst fears were confirmed. The acoustic guitar was gone, as expected, but the case for the 1967 Fender Stratocaster was also empty. I turned to Diana. She took the Stratocaster, didn't she? Diana burst into tears. She admitted that Wendy had taken the Stratocaster as well, claiming that the acoustic wasn't good enough for the gig, and that she needed a better instrument. Diana hadn't known about it until after Wendy had already left with it. She tried to stop her by calling her on her phone to return it, but Wendy had been insistent, promising to return it in perfect condition. I immediately tried calling Wendy. My calls went straight to voicemail. I left furious messages demanding that she return the guitars immediately, threatening legal action. A few hours turned into days, and still no word from Wendy. Diana was beside herself, constantly apologizing, frantically trying to reach her sister. She felt responsible, and she was, to a degree, but I was beyond the point of caring about her excuses. Finally, after nearly 10 days of silence, Wendy called Diana back. The story she spun was outrageous. She claimed she'd had to sell the guitars to pay for emergency rent and other essential expenses. She insisted that she'd always intended to buy them back eventually, that she just needed a little more time. She had the audacity to act like she was the victim. I was speechless. I couldn't believe the level of entitlement, the sheer gall of this woman. I told Diana that this was beyond unacceptable, that this was theft, plain and simple. I told her that Wendy needed to return the guitars, or she needed to pay me their full market value, which for the Stratocaster alone was a substantial sum, well into 5 figures. Diana, to her credit, finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. She agreed that Wendy was completely out of line. She tried reasoning with her, pleading with her, but Wendy was unyielding. She said she didn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of a couple of old guitars. She accused me of being materialistic and uncaring about her struggles. She even tried to turn it around on Diana, saying that Diana should be supporting her family instead of siding with me. This is where I'm questioning myself, where I need outside perspective. I told Diana that since she had given Wendy permission to take the acoustic guitar, and since Wendy was clearly not going to take responsibility, I expected Diana to cover the cost of replacing it. It wasn't about the money, though the guitar was worth several hundred. It was about the principle. Diana had violated my trust, and she needed to take some responsibility for the consequences. As for the Stratocaster, I told Diana that I held Wendy primarily responsible, but that since Diana had facilitated the theft, albeit unintentionally, I expected her to do everything in her power to get it back or to ensure that Wendy compensated me for its loss. I told her that if Wendy refused to cooperate, I would consider legal action, including filing a police report and suing her in small claims court. Diana was devastated. She argued that she didn't have that kind of money readily available, that it would deplete her personal savings, that it would put a significant strain on our finances. She accused me of being unfair, of prioritizing material possessions over family. We've been arguing about this constantly for the past few weeks. The situation with Wendy remains unresolved. The guitars are still gone. Our marriage is under a big amount of strain. I understand that my wife was trying to help her sister, that she was put in a difficult position, but I feel like she completely disregarded my feelings. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole here? Am I being unreasonable for refusing to simply absorb the loss of these valuable and sentimental guitars? I'm genuinely torn. I love my wife, but I also feel like I need to stand up for myself and protect my assets. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who responded to my initial post. The outpouring of support and advice has been overwhelming and honestly quite validating. It's been incredibly helpful to hear from so many people who have experienced similar situations, and to know that I'm not alone in feeling this way. Many of you pointed out, quite rightly, that while Wendy is undoubtedly the primary culprit in this situation, Diana bears a significant degree of responsibility as well. You're absolutely correct. In the heat of my anger and frustration over the stolen guitars, I was primarily focused on Wendy's blatant theft and disregard for my property. I hadn't fully processed Diana's role in enabling it, in creating the opportunity for Wendy to do what she did. Reading your comments, many of which emphasize the importance of trust and boundaries in a marriage, helped me to see things more clearly. I realized I was directing most of my anger outward at Wendy, when a significant portion of it needed to be addressed with Diana. I had a long and very difficult conversation with Diana last night. It wasn't a shouting match, thankfully. I told Diana that I was sorry for focusing solely on Wendy's actions and for not fully acknowledging her part in this mess. I told her that I understood she was trying to help her sister, that she was motivated by a desire to be supportive and loving. But I also explained, as calmly and clearly as I could, how deeply her actions had hurt me. I reiterated the sentimental value of the guitars, especially the Stratocaster. I tried to convey to her that it wasn't just about the monetary value, although that was certainly significant. It was about the memories and the connection to my uncle. I told her that I felt like she had prioritized Wendy's needs and wants over the trust that is fundamental to our marriage. Diana listened this time, and she apologized again. She admitted that she'd been enabling Wendy for years, driven by a combination of guilt, family loyalty, and a perhaps naive hope that Wendy would eventually change. She confessed that she'd always felt like the responsible one in her family. She acknowledged that giving Wendy permission to take any of my guitars after I had explicitly forbidden it was a massive breach of trust. We talked about solutions, about how to move forward. Diana doesn't have enough money in her personal savings to cover the full replacement value of both guitars. Not even close. The Stratocaster alone is worth a considerable amount. Here's what we've decided, at least for now. 1. Diana will use what she does have in her personal savings to purchase a replacement acoustic guitar. It won't be the exact same model, of course, but she'll find a comparable one, something of similar quality and value. 2. We're giving Wendy one final opportunity to do the right thing. We're giving her 1 week to either return the guitar in its original condition or to provide us with the full amount of money she received for selling it, along with verifiable proof of the sale price. I'm not optimistic, but we felt we had to give her one last chance. 3. If Wendy fails to comply within the week, we will proceed with legal action. Many of you suggested small claims court, and that seems like the most logical route. We're going to consult with a lawyer to discuss our options and to ensure we're following the correct procedures. The thought of suing my sister-in-law is incredibly unpleasant, but I feel like I have to protect my assets. 4. This whole ordeal has exposed some deep-seated issues in our communication and in how we handle family conflicts. We've both agreed that we need professional help to work through these issues. We've already scheduled our first appointment with a marriage counselor. I'm hopeful that this will help us to strengthen our relationship and to develop healthier coping mechanisms. 5. I cannot emphasize this enough. It's clear we have to have very strict boundaries in place. This isn't a magical solution. It doesn't bring back my Stratocaster. It doesn't erase the hurt and anger I feel. But it's a start. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and I wish I could say that things have magically resolved themselves. They haven't. But there has been some progress and, unfortunately, some further complications. The 1-week deadline we gave Wendy to return the Stratocaster or provide the money came and went with a predictable result. Absolutely nothing. No guitar, no money, no communication. She ignored our calls. It was as if we didn't exist. Diana, to her credit, finally managed to get Wendy on the phone after several days of trying. The conversation, according to Diana, was a masterclass in deflection and manipulation. Wendy spun a tale about how the guitar was in storage at a friend's house and she couldn't get to it right now because of some excuse. She promised vaguely to work something out, but it was all smoke and mirrors. It was clear she had no intention of taking responsibility for her actions. So we followed through with our plan. We consulted with a lawyer who confirmed that we had a solid case for small claims court. He explained the process and warned us that even with a judgment in our favor, collecting the money from Wendy could be a long and difficult process. We filed the paperwork. Wendy was served with the lawsuit, and that's when the real drama began. Wendy predictably reacted with outrage. She called Diana screaming, crying, accusing us of being heartless. She claimed she had no idea the guitar was so valuable, that we were being completely unreasonable, that we were acting like millionaires, which we are most definitely not. Diana, however, stood firm. This was a significant step for her. In the past, she would have likely crumbled under the pressure, apologized, and tried to smooth things over. But this time, she held her ground. She told Wendy that this was a direct consequence of her actions, that she had stolen from us, and that she needed to take responsibility. It took a little over a month, and the court date was scheduled for last week. I was a nervous wreck leading up to it. I'd never been involved in any kind of legal proceeding before, and the whole thing felt incredibly intimidating. I spent hours preparing my testimony, gathering documentation, and trying to anticipate any questions Wendy's lawyer, if she even had one, might ask. The morning of the court date arrived. We arrived at the courtroom, found our seats, and waited. Wendy never showed up. The judge waited for the allotted time, then proceeded with the hearing. He reviewed our documentation, listened to my brief testimony, and finding no reason to dispute our claim, ruled in our favor by default. We were awarded the full amount we had requested. The estimated market value of the Stratocaster, plus the cost of the replacement acoustic guitar that Diana had already purchased. We had the judgment, but we knew that collecting the money from Wendy would be a Herculean task, if not impossible. The lawyer had explained the various methods of enforcement. Garnishing wages, highly unlikely given Wendy's employment history. Placing a lien on property, even more unlikely as she doesn't own anything of value. Seizing assets, which she also doesn't seem to have. I'm not holding my breath. I'm realistic. I doubt we'll ever see the full amount, or perhaps any of it, anytime soon. But as I said before, it's become more about the principle than the money. It's about setting a boundary, about demonstrating to Diana that enabling her sister's behavior is not okay. On a more positive note, the couple's counseling has been incredibly beneficial. It's been hard work, painful at times, but it's also been incredibly revealing. We're learning to communicate more effectively, to express our needs and concerns without resorting to blame or accusations. Diana is working on recognizing and breaking her codependent patterns with Wendy. She's understanding that helping her sister often means enabling her destructive behavior. I'm working on being more patient and understanding, on recognizing the pressure Diana has been under from her family for her entire life. We've also established a new and very firm rule. Wendy is no longer welcome in our home. This was a difficult decision for Diana, but she ultimately agreed that it was necessary. I need to feel safe and secure in my own house, and I can't do that with Wendy around. It's a sad situation, but it's a necessary boundary. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Parents kicked me out to make room for their golden child. Years later, she ran away at 13, and now they're begging me for help after lying to her that I abandoned them. Growing up, I always felt like a bit of a disappointment to my parents. My mom and dad were hoping for a girl. In fact, they'd been trying for a daughter for years but had no luck until, well, me. They didn't hide the fact that they were disappointed that I was a boy much either. I overheard them say they felt like they'd been given a spare, and I even remember hearing them call me a remnant once as a kid. That didn't make much sense, but as I got older, it hit me hard. It was obvious that I was just the kid they had while waiting for something better to come along. My parents kept trying for another kid. In fact, it was all they'd ever talk about at family gatherings or when their friends came over. I remember a lot of people telling my parents that they needed to be grateful that they at least had one kid. But my parents would brush them off and tell them that unless it was a girl, they had no kids anyway. When I was 15, they finally had my sister, who was also their miracle child. She was everything they'd been hoping for. They poured everything into her. They gave her all of their attention, money, and time. The moment she was born, I pretty much stopped existing in my parents' eyes. I know I barely existed in their eyes already, but when my sister came along, I was literally invisible. They barely had any time for me, and they made sure that everything that had to do with me was done in a way that made it easier for them to look after my sister. They stopped caring about my hobbies or interests, but they made sure that they showered my sister with praise for every little thing. I knew she was their priority, and I accepted that. What else could I do? By the time I turned 18, it became pretty clear they didn't want me around anymore. The day of my birthday, my parents sat me down, and it wasn't for any kind of celebration. They told me that they needed more room in the house and that I'd have to move out. Apparently, they thought that by me being there, I was taking away resources from my sister. I tried to explain to them that I didn't have anywhere to go yet and that I just needed a couple of months to save up and find a place. But they weren't interested in anything I had to say. They said I'd had plenty of time to prepare and that I should be able to manage just fine on my own. So just like that, I was out. I didn't have much. I just had a few bags of clothes and whatever money I could scrape together from odd jobs I'd done in high school. I ended up couch surfing with friends for a bit and then moving into a tiny, run-down apartment. Those first few years were rough. I worked all kinds of jobs, from working night shifts at convenience stores to doing heavy labor on construction sites, just to make ends meet. I never really had a stable job, and I was constantly worried about making rent or affording food. There were nights I'd fall asleep hungry and not knowing if I'd be able to afford my next meal. During that time, I tried to keep in touch with my parents. I don't know why. I know I should have been angry with them, but they were still my parents, and I guess I hoped that they cared about me at least a little bit. I'd call them every once in a while, hoping for even a small sign that they missed me, but every conversation was short and awkward, like they were just waiting for it to end. The only reason we spoke was because I was the one reaching out. They never called to check on me or see if I was okay. After 2 years of the same thing, I just stopped calling. It hurt too much to keep putting myself out there when I knew that they didn't really care about me, and they never reached out to me either. They never even sent a message for holidays or birthdays. I figured they had their perfect family now, and I wasn't a part of it. Yeah, it hurt, but I learned to make peace with that. 9 years went by like that. I finally managed to build a stable life for myself. I had a steady job, a small but comfortable place to live, and friends who had become my chosen family. I'd accepted that my parents were out of my life for good. Then, out of nowhere, a few days ago, I got a call from them. I honestly thought something must have happened to one of them, so I picked up. Besides, I hadn't heard their voices in almost 7 years, and they sounded kind of erratic, if I'm being honest. They told me that they needed to talk to me about my sister. They went on to very dramatically explain that my sister was going through a rough time and was out of control. I was surprised by that. She was only 12 or 13. I didn't understand how things could be so bad already. But they told me she was constantly skipping school, getting into fights, and even caught up in some serious trouble. She was already experimenting with substances, hanging out with sketchy people, and just doing things that seemed way out of hand for someone her age. Apparently, they had to spend a ton of money getting her out of trouble. They tried to put her in different programs and paid for all these counseling sessions that ended up not really doing much for my sister. I was floored. I get that teenagers can be difficult, but it was hard to picture a kid that young spiraling so much. It sounded like all the years of spoiling her had finally caught up with them, but I couldn't wrap my head around how bad things had gotten. After telling me all of this, my parents told me that I needed to help them out. They wanted me to come back into their lives to support them both emotionally and financially. They explained that taking care of my sister had taken a massive toll on them and that they just couldn't handle it anymore. It was like they expected me to drop everything, forgive all the years of neglect and rejection, and somehow step in to make things right. They tried to guilt-trip me by saying I was still their son and that family needed to be there for each other in hard times. I was shocked to hear about what my sister had been turned into, but hearing them not even asking, but demanding that I help them, made me furious. Where was that family needs to stick together mindset when I was 18 and begging them to let me stay? Where was all this concern when I was sleeping on friends' couches and struggling to get by? They tossed me out without a second thought. And now, just because things had gone south for them, They wanted me to swoop in and save the day? I told them no, and that I wasn't interested in helping them. I said I'd built a life for myself without their help, and I didn't see why I should put myself in a difficult position now just because they'd raised my sister to be a nightmare. They did not take that well. They called me selfish and ungrateful. They said that I was abandoning them in their time of need. They then accused me of holding a grudge and said I should be willing to help because they were still my family. After listening to them rant for a while, I just hung up. I didn't want to hear it. I knew I'd made the right decision, but it's been a few days now since that call. They still haven't stopped trying to reach out to me. My mom texted me and asked me if I'd be willing to hear them out over dinner this weekend. But honestly, I don't know. I know that I don't owe them anything after the way they treated me all my life, but a part of me still feels guilty. I can't shake the feeling that maybe I'm in the wrong and that maybe they're right, and I should be a bigger person and help them out despite everything they've done. I keep thinking about it, and it's messing with my head. I can't help but wonder if I was too harsh with them. Part of me thinks that they made their bed and should lie in it, but another part of me wonders if I'll regret this decision down the road. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my parents after everything they put me through? Update 1. Hey everyone. I wanted to give an update because things have definitely moved forward since my last post. Also, I saw a lot of questions in the comments, so I'll try to clear up a few things. First, a lot of people asked why I don't just cut my sister off too and if I blame her for any of this. I want to make it clear that I don't really have any negative feelings toward my sister herself. I don't know her at all really. She was a baby when I left, and I haven't been around since. To me, she's just a kid I never got to know, and any anger or resentment I feel isn't directed at her. It's my parents I'm mad at for how they treated me and for how they made me feel like I didn't matter once she came along. They're the ones who ignored me, kicked me out, and now expect me to come back and save them. I also saw some questions about what my parents were like when I was growing up and if there were specific things that made me feel unwanted. It's honestly tough to talk about, but I think it's important to help you all understand why I feel this way. My parents weren't outright abusive, but they definitely made it clear that I was more of a disappointment than anything else. They wanted a girl so badly and openly talked about it. I remember them saying things like, "We waited for our miracle baby," while referring to my sister and treating me like I was just there in the meantime. Once my sister came along, they seemed like they finally got what they always wanted, and everything I did was ignored. If I got a good grade, no one noticed. If I had a big moment like a graduation or an award, it was barely mentioned or even acknowledged. And then, after she was born, it was like they couldn't wait for me to just leave. They saw me as the extra they didn't need, which is probably why they kicked me out as soon as I turned 18. Anyway, I hope that clears things up. Now, here's the actual update. After reading your comments, I decided to take some advice and reach out to my parents. A lot of you suggested that if I wanted closure or to get a better idea of what they wanted from me, I should meet them in a neutral location. So, I ended up asking my parents if they'd be willing to meet at a coffee shop in town. They agreed, and I showed up with the mindset that this was going to be just a talk and not me jumping in to fix anything. I was still pretty angry, but I wanted to see what they had to say. When I got there, I could see right away that they weren't in good shape. They looked tired and much older than I remembered, not to mention they looked really stressed out. They wasted no time and got straight into it. They began begging me for help. They gave me more information than they did the last time we spoke. Apparently, my sister's issues are worse than I initially thought. Beyond the substance use and legal trouble, she's had to go to multiple rehab programs, all of which they've had to pay for out of pocket. She's been skipping school, sneaking out, and causing trouble with friends who are a terrible influence. My parents said that they tried everything they could to change this behavior, but nothing has apparently worked. It turns out they've sold a lot of their things, including my childhood home, to cover these expenses. They're living in a small apartment now and struggling to make ends meet because of all the costs they've taken on to save my sister. They even talked about selling some family heirlooms to scrape together more money, which they think will only last a few more months. Now, they're at a point where they're truly desperate, and they said that they needed my help to get back on their feet. But while I felt sorry for them, I couldn't help but feel like there was this underlying expectation from them. They kept bringing up the fact that we were family and that I was their son and that it was my duty to help out. It was almost like they thought that no matter what they'd done in the past, I would still step up because of some duty I supposedly have. The way they were talking made me feel like they hadn't really processed the hurt they caused me or even acknowledged the fact that they treated me poorly. They just kept pushing the idea that I should help them now because they're my parents and it's what's right. As they kept going, I could feel all these old feelings of anger and resentment coming up. It was clear to me that they didn't see any of this as their fault. They brushed off the fact that they kicked me out and said that it was just parenting, and that they'd done what was best for the family at the time. They acted like it was normal to treat me that way, and now they were expecting me to just forgive everything and swoop in to fix things. I realized that they weren't looking for forgiveness or understanding. They were looking for a solution, and to them, that solution was me. They needed someone to take on the financial burden of all the decisions they'd made over the years. Listening to them speak only made me angrier and more upset with them. They still didn't get it. They still didn't understand that they'd pushed me away so hard that I barely knew them anymore. They didn't understand what family meant at all, and they still insisted that I treat them like family. I let them finish talking, but I told them that I couldn't help them. I explained that I'd worked hard to build a life on my own after they left me stranded and that I wasn't in a position financially or emotionally to support them. I said I didn't feel any sense of obligation to bail them out of a mess they'd created by themselves. They were furious. They told me I was being selfish, that I was abandoning my family, and that I was heartless for not helping my sister. I could see the anger and disappointment in their eyes, and it was like looking back into the past. It was like nothing had changed. They were still trying to guilt me into feeling like I owe them something. I ended up leaving that meeting feeling a lot more conflicted than when I went in. Part of me is relieved that I set a boundary and stood up for myself, but another part of me feels guilty, like maybe I'm turning my back on them when they're at their lowest. It's hard to explain, but even though I know they hurt me, it still feels strange to walk away like this. I keep thinking about their situation and about my sister, who I don't even know. I feel sorry for her, but I don't feel like I can save her. It's painful to realize that even after all these years, my parents don't see me as an individual with my own life and struggles, but instead just as someone whom they can use to fix their problems. I'm trying to let go of the guilt, but it's hard. So I guess I'm back here to ask if I made the right call by sticking to my decision. Am I wrong for feeling this way? Update 2. Hey everyone. I'm back again because things have gotten even crazier since my last update, which was only about a week ago. Honestly, I thought things would settle down after I decided not to help my parents financially, but I was way off. Just a few hours ago, I got a call from my sister. This is the first time I've ever heard from her directly, and it completely caught me off guard. I barely even know her. I only have these vague memories from when she was a baby right before I left home. So, when I picked up the phone and heard her voice, I was stunned. I had no idea what to expect, but I figured maybe she wanted to reach out and talk to me, considering my parents did. The call started out okay. She was polite and almost sweet, which was surprising given everything I'd heard about her behavior. She asked me to lend our parents money to help them with their current situation. I could tell she'd rehearsed this pitch because she was laying it on thick about how they were struggling and how I could save the family. But I stood my ground and told her that I wasn't able to help them financially. I tried to keep my tone respectful and explained that my relationship with our parents was complicated and that I had to make decisions that were best for me. That's when everything flipped. She went from polite to furious in seconds. She started accusing me of being selfish and abandoning her with all the responsibility of dealing with our parents. She kept saying that I was turning my back on my family and had always been jealous of her. She claimed that I was acting like I was better than them because I got away and started my own life while they'd been the ones supporting me all along. It was shocking to hear her talk like this. It was almost as if she'd rehearsed these words too. I mean, she sounded just like our parents. Besides, she sounded so entitled to my help. It was like she genuinely believed it was my job to step in and fix everything. I was so taken aback that I couldn't even respond. Here was this person I'd never had a relationship with demanding that I make up for years of choices I had nothing to do with. After she finished her rant, she hung up before I could even process what had just happened. After the call, I knew I needed to talk to my parents to figure out what was going on. I was so confused. Like, why did my sister think I'd abandon her? And where was all this hostility and anger towards me coming from? I called my parents, and as soon as they picked up, I asked them straight up if they'd been telling my sister that I'd abandoned her and them. At first, they hesitated, but they quickly admitted that they'd told her for years that I'd left the family because I couldn't handle sharing their attention with her. They'd basically made me seem like I was a selfish older brother who couldn't deal with having a younger sibling and had cut ties with them out of spite. Honestly, I felt like someone had knocked the wind out of me when I heard this. All these years, my parents have been feeding my sister this twisted version of why I left and made me out to be some kind of villain. No wonder she felt like I'd abandoned her. She'd grown up hearing that I left because I didn't want to share my parents' attention. Meanwhile, the reality was that my parents made me feel like an outsider from the moment she was born, and they didn't hesitate to kick me out as soon as I was legally an adult. I pretty much hung up on them after that, and they haven't tried to reach out again yet. Then again, it's only been a few hours since I last spoke to them. Aside from that, I honestly don't know how to feel right now. On one hand, I'm angry at my parents for lying to my sister about me and for making her think that I was the one who walked away. But I'm also frustrated with my sister for lashing out at me and demanding that I help them as if I owe it to her. It's hard to shake off this resentment I'm feeling, but now I'm also feeling guilty in a way I can't fully explain. I wish my parents had told her the truth about why I left. Maybe if they had, things would be different between me and my sister. I may not have been able to help my parents financially, but I definitely would have been able to get through to my sister and help her change behavior. But now it feels like there's too much damage to fix. I'm not even sure if I want to. This whole situation is so exhausting because just when I thought that I was done with my family for good, they came back in the worst possible way. I know a lot of comments have asked me to just block my parents and move on, but it's not like that for me. Call me what you want, but this is still family, and I feel like I need to know what's going on at the very least. I really am in no position to help my family out, but this is the first time that they've reached out to me, and a part of me is happy about that. Still, I know that I definitely won't reach out to them first or help them out in any way, only because it's clear to me that my parents are still trying to manipulate the situation to get what they want, and my sister is too wrapped up in their version of the story to see things differently. I don't know what else to do. Update 3. Hey everyone, it's been a few months since my last update, and I've had a lot of time to reflect and let things settle down. Honestly, it's been a lot quieter for me, but only because I made the choice to stay out of the mess my parents and sister have created. I'm learning that sometimes the best way to find peace is by just stepping back and not letting their drama take up space in my life anymore. After my last update, things didn't really get any better with my parents. About a month after I last updated on here, they called me again. I was dreading it, but I picked up because I wanted to hear what they had to say. This time, they were even more desperate than before, and they used everything they could think of to guilt me into giving them money. They talked about how bad things were, how they were on the verge of losing everything, and how they needed me to step in and fix it, the usual, really. At first, they tried the whole family is supposed to stick together guilt trip. They even threatened that they were going to make my life miserable if I didn't help them. They then switched tones and said that I was the only one who could help them now. Honestly, I was pretty disgusted. After everything that happened, they still had the audacity to threaten me, and not once did they stop to think about how badly they treated me. I stood my ground. I told them I couldn't help them financially, and that it wasn't my job to fix their problems. I reminded them that they made these choices and it wasn't on me to clean up the mess. They weren't happy about that, obviously. They kept calling for the next month and trying to guilt-trip me some more. It felt like they didn't even care to understand why I was refusing to help. They just saw me as a means to an end. Eventually, they stopped calling. I figured that they realized I wasn't budging. For a month, I didn't hear anything from them, and honestly, I thought that might be the end of it. But then, just about a week ago, I got another call. I almost didn't pick up, but I was curious to know what had happened. Turns out, things have only gotten worse for them. They told me they had to declare bankruptcy. They'd sold almost everything they had to cover their debts, and they were basically starting over with nothing. And then they mentioned my sister. She had apparently cut contact with them completely and moved in with one of her friends. Apparently, someone who supported her bad behavior. She's only 13, but somehow she managed to move out and live with a friend's family who was just as enabling as she was. I don't understand how that happened, but I guess it's another example of how messed up everything has gotten. I asked my parents why they didn't get the authorities involved, and they told me that it was for the best that my sister no longer lived with them because they couldn't see themselves helping her out anymore. So they basically abandoned their second child as well. At first, my parents tried to put the blame on me. They said that if I had just helped them out when they asked, none of this would have happened. They said I was the reason everything went downhill. Of course, they couldn't admit that they were responsible for their own actions. I was beyond mad. I told them straight up that everything happening to them was a result of their own decisions and the way they treated me. I reminded them of how they kicked me out when I turned 18, how they treated me like a second-class citizen in my own home, and how they ignored me when I needed them. I reminded them about how they didn't even acknowledge how that affected me, and instead, they just kept trying to shift the blame onto me. That's when they finally stopped making excuses and started backtracking. They apologized and said that they regretted everything they did to me. They told me they wished they had done things differently. It felt like they were saying all the right things, but it was too little, too late. I couldn't just forget how they had treated me for years, and I couldn't erase the fact that they had destroyed 2 lives. Mine and my sister's. They had pushed me away, and now they were reaping the consequences of that. I felt pity for them. I honestly did. But at the same time, I knew that I couldn't sacrifice the life I'd built for myself to try to fix things that were already broken. I told them I couldn't offer any help and that I needed to keep my distance. They were upset, but I stayed firm in my decision. After I hung up, I still felt very angry at them for what they did to me, but at the same time I was sad for them. I wish they had taken the time to see what they were doing when they had the chance, but now it's too late. I've made my peace with the fact that I can't save them, and that's something I'm learning to live with. I don't know what the future holds for them or for my sister. All I know is that I'm not going to let their mistakes ruin my peace. I've come too far to let them pull me back into their chaos. Maybe over time, I'll try to reach out to my sister again and see if I can help get her on the right track. But for now, I have much bigger things to worry about. I can only hope that she learns the right things until then. So yeah, that's about it for me. It'll be a long while before I check in on my family again. I know this isn't exactly the happiest ending, but it's something that I've made peace with. Thank you so much for all the advice and the comments. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My sister locked me up in a basement when she overheard I was pregnant at her engagement party. My parents canceled her wedding funds when they found out I fell and almost lost my baby. I, 33F, am about 3 months pregnant. After 3 years of trying, multiple rounds of IVF, and what felt like an eternity of heartache, we told my parents a month ago in private because they've been super supportive throughout this whole roller coaster. There was no big reveal, no social media post, just quiet joy between us. Besides, I didn't want to tell too many people outside of mine and my husband's parents because I wanted to be further along in my pregnancy before committing to a huge announcement. Fast forward to last weekend, my sister, let's call her Emily, 29F, had her engagement party. Emily's always been a lot. She loves being the center of attention. Growing up, she pulled stunts left and right to stay in the spotlight. Family holidays? Emily's in the spotlight. Friends' birthdays? Somehow she makes herself the center of attention. I've spent my whole life letting her have her way because honestly, I just don't have the energy to fight her. Honestly, I expected some minor drama at the party, but I had no intention of making it about me. My plan was to stay in the background, support Emily, and leave early since the exhaustion has been hitting me hard lately. I even wore something loose to avoid questions. I wasn't going to breathe a word about the pregnancy to anyone. Everything was going fine until my mom pulled me aside during the party. She just wanted to check on how I was feeling since the pregnancy had been rough so far. I've suffered the worst of all the early symptoms of pregnancy, so I was glad that I could talk about it with my mom, who would have understood my suffering better than anyone else. We stepped away from the guests to chat in a quiet corner, but unfortunately, Emily overheard us, and that's when things went completely off the rails. Emily went from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. She barged into the conversation fuming and accused me of trying to steal her thunder. I was so confused. I tried explaining that I wasn't announcing anything. I told her I had told Mom and Dad weeks ago and we were just having a private conversation, but Emily wasn't having any of it. She said I was being selfish and that I couldn't stand to let her have one day to herself. She made a huge scene right there and people started noticing. I was mortified. I kept telling her I didn't mean for any of this to happen, but it was like she wasn't even listening. She was convinced I had come to her party just to ruin her moment. And because Emily can never just let things go, she kept pushing. She said I always had to make things about me, that I was jealous of her, and that this was my typical behavior. At that point, I was so overwhelmed I wanted to leave, but I didn't have to because Emily stormed off. I only stayed at the party because my mom convinced me to be there to support my sister. I also figured that if I gave Emily some time to cool down, I could approach her again and properly explain what had happened. Once again, I didn't have to do that. Emily suddenly approached me with a weird grin on her face. She said she wanted to show me something in the basement. It was something about a keepsake from our childhood that she thought I'd appreciate. Honestly, I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured that this was maybe her way of smoothing things over. I followed her downstairs, but as soon as I stepped into the basement, she slammed the door shut and locked it. I froze. I heard her laughing through the door. She said that it was payback for trying to make her engagement party about me. At first, I thought she was joking, so I knocked and told her to open the door, but she didn't. She just kept giggling and walked away, leaving me trapped down there. At that moment, panic hit me hard. It was cold and dark, and I wasn't feeling great to begin with. The stress and nausea kicked in full force. I started to pace back and forth because my mind was racing with other ways I could possibly leave the basement. I noticed that there was a window that I could potentially get out of. I needed a little boost to get my entire body out, so I placed a box that I found in the basement under the window so I could climb onto it. Unfortunately, in my state of panic, I didn't realize how much I was shaking and how dizzy I was feeling. My foot slipped while I was halfway up on the box, and I fell, landing hard on my side and stomach. The pain that shot through me was terrifying. I lay there for a moment, gasping, trying to assess if the baby was okay. My heart was racing like crazy. I started crying because I was terrified and so frustrated with my situation. My mind wouldn't stop racing with thoughts about the worst possible scenarios. Like, what if this fall caused a miscarriage? What if something happened to my baby because of Emily's stupid joke? I tried pulling myself together and slowly managed to sit myself in a comfortable position while still on the floor. I don't know how long I was down there, but it felt like forever. No one came looking for me for what was probably at least an hour. I sat on the cold floor, hugged my knees, and tried my best to not spiral into a full-blown panic attack. Eventually, I heard footsteps and my husband's voice calling my name from the other side of the door. He was frantic, and when I banged weakly on the door, he unlocked it and practically yanked me out of there. He took one look at me and said we needed to leave immediately. I was in so much pain and so scared that I didn't argue. We rushed to the ER, and I spent the whole car ride trying not to cry or freak out. All I could think was, if this was it, what if I lost the baby because my sister couldn't handle someone else getting attention for 5 minutes? At the hospital, they did an ultrasound. I was holding my breath the entire time, and I barely kept everything together then too. Thankfully, the baby was okay, but the doctor said it was a close call. If I'd fallen harder, the outcome could have been much worse. I felt both relieved and emotionally drained. My husband was furious though, and told me he wasn't going to let this slide. He immediately called my parents and informed them about what had happened. We had left the party in such a hurry that no one was really given an explanation. My husband wanted my parents to, at the very least, sternly talk to Emily, and also to tell her that we would no longer be seeing her until I had the baby. Trust me, I am beyond grateful that I have a husband who has my back so fiercely. We ended up staying at the ER for a few hours until I was stable and ready to go home. By the time we got back to our place, the party was long over and my phone was blowing up with messages from my mom and dad. I didn't answer any of them at first. I just wanted to sleep and forget that the entire day had even happened. My husband assured them that I was okay over text and shut his phone off as well. The next morning, my parents called again, and that's when I found out what had happened after we left. Apparently, after we rushed off to the ER, My parents were very confused about what had happened. They tried to get Emily to tell them what had happened because apparently my husband had caused a small scene when he started asking Emily about where I was. When my husband called my parents while I was at the hospital and told them what happened, they were furious. They immediately confronted Emily about locking me in the basement in front of everyone present at that party. My mom tried to downplay it by calling it a harmless prank that went too far, but my dad wasn't having it. He was furious that Emily would do something so reckless, especially after knowing everything that I had gone through to get pregnant. He told Emily that enough was enough, and right then and there he made a huge announcement. My parents were pulling all the funding for Emily's wedding and honeymoon. My parents had always told my sister and me that they would love to be a part of all of our big moments in life, and that one of their ways of being a part of those moments was through contributing financially towards it. My parents helped me fund my wedding, and they intended to do the same for Emily. Unfortunately, Emily never thought that my parents would ever take back their promise. Emily lost it. She started crying in front of everyone. She kept repeating that I had ruined her life. She called me evil and accused me of doing all of this on purpose. My parents told me they had never seen her act that unhinged before, but I wasn't surprised. Emily always reacted badly when things didn't go her way. She begged my parents to reconsider, but my dad stood his ground. Since then, I've been flooded with texts and calls from Emily and my mom. My mom keeps asking me to talk to my dad and convince him to change his mind, but I told her I'm done. Emily crossed a line, and I'm not going to sweep it under the rug just to keep the peace. Emily, of course, has been blowing up my phone with every insult under the sun. She's blaming me for everything. She's saying that if I had just stayed quiet, none of this would have happened. She insists I've destroyed her life and that her fiancé is starting to doubt if he even wants to marry her. Part of me feels guilty, but the other part knows this isn't my fault. Still, I do feel bad, and even though my dad and my husband have both assured me that I'm not in the wrong, I can't help but think that I must be at some fault. So, AITA for ruining my sister's engagement and also ruining her wedding and honeymoon? Date 1. I didn't expect my post to blow up the way it did. First of all, thank you so much for all the support and comments on my original post. I've been reading through them, and it's been a huge help to know I'm not crazy for feeling the way I do. A lot of people asked if my parents ever favored me or if Emily and I had a history of bad blood. So let me clear that up before I update you guys on what has happened since I last posted here. To be honest, I wouldn't say my parents played favorites. My parents were actually pretty fair growing up. They tried their best to treat us equally, and Emily only got a little more attention because she was the baby of the family. But I guess that little extra attention turned her into the kind of person who craves attention and makes everything about herself. She was the kid who threw tantrums if someone else got the spotlight regardless of the event, and instead of setting boundaries with her, my parents mostly gave in just to keep the peace. So, while I wouldn't call it favoritism, Emily definitely got away with a lot more than I ever did. I've spent most of my life trying to keep things smooth between us. I learned to just let her have her way because it was easier than fighting. Besides, I'm the older sister and I always felt like it was my job to be the mature one and not rock the boat. But no matter how hard I tried, Emily would find a way to push me to my limit. Every family event turned into a balancing act where I tried my best to avoid stepping on her toes so she wouldn't explode. I guess that's part of why she feels so entitled now. Now on to the update everyone's been waiting for. After my parents canceled funding for Emily's wedding, she completely lost it. The next day, she sent me this long text accusing me of ruining her life and stealing her moment. She didn't apologize for locking me in the basement, by the way. Instead, she doubled down, saying it was just a joke that I took too seriously. When I didn't respond, she went full attack mode. Emily started telling everyone in the family that I faked the whole pregnancy scare for attention. After my husband rushed me to the ER that day, we got out pretty quickly among the rest of our family that I was pregnant, which is another outcome I absolutely did not want. Other than fielding my sister's crazy texts and calls, I've also had to deal with the rest of my family reaching out to me. Initially, it was to congratulate me and ask me how I was doing. Then it slowly became bizarre. A lot of them started asking me how I could fake my pregnancy just to bring my sister down. I had no idea what was going on. Turned out, Emily began spreading this lie that I planned to get hurt just to ruin her engagement party. She literally went around telling everyone in our family that I was some evil mastermind who tried to sabotage her life. I've had several relatives reach out because they were confused and wondering if the pregnancy was even real, which was beyond hurtful. One cousin, Eva, asked if I was making up the pregnancy just to punish Emily. It was insane. To make things even worse, my mom is trying to stay neutral in all of this, which honestly feels like betrayal. She keeps saying that Emily's just stressed out about the wedding and that I need to be the bigger person. But how am I supposed to be the bigger person when my own sister is spreading lies about me during one of the happiest times in my life? It's exhausting. I tried to argue with my mom, but I was getting nowhere, so I decided to distance myself from her too. About 2 weeks after Emily's engagement party, she showed up at my house. She was banging on my door and demanding that I fix this because I ruined everything. My husband told me not to open the door, but I stupidly thought maybe she was coming to apologize. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. The second I let her in, she started screaming at me about how I'd ruined her life and how everything was falling apart because of me. She even said her fiancé's parents were reconsidering the whole wedding because they think she's immature, and she blames me for that too. When I tried to explain that none of this was my fault and that she was the one who locked me in a basement, she completely snapped. Emily stormed into my living room, saw the ultrasound photo I had framed on the coffee table, and broke the frame before ripping the ultrasounds to shreds. I was frozen. I couldn't believe she would do something so cruel, especially after everything that had happened. My husband was livid and told her to leave, but before she stormed out, she shouted that she hoped I lost the baby so she could have her life back. I've never seen that kind of rage in her before, and it terrified me. After she left, I just broke down. I couldn't stop crying for hours. It felt like everything had hit me all at once. Being locked in the basement, almost losing the baby, and then realizing my sister had no limits to her cruelty. I kept replaying her words in my head, and I couldn't understand how someone could wish that on their own family. My husband wants to go no contact with her immediately, and honestly, I don't know if I can argue with him. I know I should cut her off, but part of me still feels guilty, like I'm somehow to blame for all of this. My mom keeps telling me that Emily is just in a bad place and that I should try to forgive her. But how do you forgive someone for wishing harm on your child? To make things even more complicated, Emily's fiancé reached out to me privately. He apologized for Emily's behavior at the party and said he's been really struggling with her crazy behavior. He mentioned that he's not sure if he can go through with the wedding anymore because he's starting to see a side of her he didn't know existed. I didn't know what to say to him. It's heartbreaking because I never wanted to be involved in their relationship drama, but now it feels like I'm stuck in the middle. At this point, I'm not sure what to do. Part of me wants to forgive Emily for the sake of my mother, but another part of me is terrified that she'll just keep doing more damage. I don't know if she's capable of changing. I don't want to spend my pregnancy constantly looking over my shoulder and wondering what she'll do next. For now, I'm focusing on my health and my baby. My husband has been incredibly supportive, and we're just trying to keep the stress as low as possible. But I can't shake the feeling that things with Emily are far from over. Knowing her, she's not going to go down without causing more drama. I'll keep you all posted if anything else happens. At this point, I'm just hoping for a little peace, but I'm not holding my breath. Update 2. Hi, it's been a month since I last posted on here, but I've been very busy. A lot has happened, and I've finally gotten some free time to myself, so I thought I'd update you guys. Okay, let me begin from where I last stopped. After Emily ripped my ultrasounds and stormed off, I was inconsolable for a whole week. I guess Emily told her fiancé about what she'd done, which was why he contacted me about being unsure about marrying her. They'd apparently begun to also get into a lot of fights. Her fiancé reached out to me to explain everything that happened. Apparently, he tried to assure her that they didn't need my parents' money to go through with the wedding because the both of them had saved up more than enough. But my sister refused to listen. She insisted on ruining my life the way I had apparently ruined hers. All day and all night, the only thing she would talk about was how she could get back at me. Terrified her fiancé. Eventually, it got to him, and he broke the news to her that he was leaving her. He even told her that she was a lunatic and that she was the only reason that he was leaving her. My sister was an absolute wreck. She wouldn't stop calling and texting me with threats because I was ruining her life again. I ignored it until I couldn't stand it and blocked her number. That didn't stop her. She began spamming my husband's phone with texts meant for me. She even asked my husband how he could stand to be married to me when all I cared about was myself. She also did not hold back on her insults towards my unborn child. I had such a strong urge to pick the phone up and yell profanities at her. But I knew that would only cause me and my baby more distress. So I had my husband block her number as well. It was peaceful for a few days until I got a call from my mom. My mom told me that the day before she called me, my sister had come over. She was hysterical and wouldn't stop crying. She kept ranting and raving about how all I had to do was keep my mouth shut about my pregnancy during her engagement. She wouldn't stop talking about how I had ruined every aspect of her life by simply existing. According to her, she's had to settle for a lot of things because I somehow always got the best of things. I have no idea where she got that idea from, especially considering how many of my special events I've had to give up so she could have her moment in the spotlight. Anyway, after listening to my sister rant about how I was the reason for every bad thing that ever happened to her, my mom was somehow hit with clarity. She realized how entitled and insane Emily was behaving. I guess my mom got an actual insight into how my sister's mind was working, and none of it aligned with my mom's belief that my sister was just having a bad day. My mom eventually had enough of my sister's rant and called my sister out on her insanity. My sister did not take that well at all. If anything, it made her break down even worse. The only person she thought was on her side turned against her, and that made her even angrier. She apparently got up from the couch where they were talking and ran upstairs to my bedroom. She then began to wreck my room. She threw things off of the shelves, broke every single trophy I ever won, and tore up all my certificates. That really set my mom off. My mom is a very sentimental person, so when my sister and I moved out, she made sure that she left our bedrooms the way they were. The only thing she did to our rooms was make sure it was clean. Our rooms were reminders to my mom that we were still always going to be there near her. So for Emily to completely tear it apart was like her ruining all of my mom's happiest moments at once. My mom was beyond heartbroken and furious. She yelled for my sister to leave, and my sister smiled at my mom before leaving. Yeah, my mom isn't my sister's biggest fan right now. She called me to apologize for constantly making excuses for my sister. She told me that I had every right to feel what I felt because what Emily did was horrible. Honestly, I never thought that my mom would actually come around to see how horrible Emily was. So hearing her apologize was beyond shocking. I was grateful though because I suddenly realized just how much guilt I had been freed of. I was so relieved that my mom was on my side and not insisting that I keep the peace with Emily. My parents have now gone low contact with Emily, and they've told her that too. My mom has been inconsolable, but I've done my best to be there for her. My husband and I spent a lot of time helping my mom piece my room back together. My dad is officially furious with Emily. He's mentioned on several occasions how he does not want to see her for a really long while. The last I heard from Emily's fiancé, he left her finally. He lost a lot of money because he had to break the lease on their apartment, but he's happier right now. I don't know where Emily is, and honestly, I couldn't care less about where she is or what she's doing. I just want her far away from me at least until I've given birth. But that's it for now. I don't think anything more dramatic could happen now, but I guess only time will tell. If I do come back to make another update, I hope it's only after I've given birth. Until then, thank you to everyone who has read my posts and has showered me with well wishes. Update 3. Hey everyone. I'm back with what I hope will be the final update. Things have been wild, but I'm happy to report that I've officially given birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. He's the light of our lives, and honestly, having him here has put so much into perspective. But of course, Emily just couldn't let me have this moment without causing one last bit of chaos. For the first few weeks after I gave birth, things were surprisingly quiet. Emily stayed away, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she was finally going to leave me alone. My husband and I were adjusting to life with a newborn, and it felt like we could actually breathe for the first time in months. My parents had been wonderful. They made sure to check in on us regularly, and my mom even brought over meals to help out. It was peaceful, and I felt so relieved, especially because my parents made sure to not mention Emily and the distress she caused us. But then one time when my parents were visiting, my mom mentioned in passing that Emily had been asking a lot about the baby. Apparently, Emily wanted to know when she could come to see my son. My mom was cautious because she knew how unstable Emily had been, but she still felt guilty about Emily being left out. My dad, on the other hand, was completely against the idea of her coming near us. He didn't trust her, and neither did I. But I also didn't want to stir up more drama, so I told my mom I'd think about it. Then a week later, I got an anonymous text message. It was from an unknown number, but after reading the message, I immediately knew who it was. Emily. The message was full of insults. She called me a selfish cow who was trying to erase her from the family by having a baby first. She went on and on about how my son didn't deserve to have the life I was giving him and how it should have been her with the first grandchild. I was stunned. After all this time, she was still so bitter and consumed by jealousy. The final straw came when my husband's mom called us one morning, completely frantic. Someone had sent her a letter, yes, a physical letter, that said that I was an unfit mother. It was full of lies about how I was neglecting my baby, that I was emotionally unstable, and even vaguely hinted that I was abusive. The letter was anonymous, but I had my mother-in-law send me a picture of the letter, and sure enough, it was Emily's handwriting. My poor mother-in-law didn't believe a word in the letter, but was horrified that someone knew my husband and me enough to be so specific with their insults against us. She was also disgusted with those accusations and was worried that somebody was after us. That was it for me. I couldn't take it anymore. Emily had crossed every possible line, and I couldn't allow her to keep affecting my life and my family. After discussing it with my husband, we made the decision to move back to his home state. We had talked about it before, but this time it felt like the only way to truly escape her insanity. We made sure to not tell many people where in his hometown we were moving, just so Emily would have absolutely no way of getting to us. We packed up our house over the next few weeks and made the big move. My parents were supportive of our decision, even though it meant we wouldn't be close to them anymore. My dad was still furious with Emily, and my mom was heartbroken that her daughter's relationship had come to this. But they understood that we needed to do what was best for us and our son. As for Emily, well, she's finally facing some consequences. After her ex-fiancé left her, she apparently began to stalk him and harass him both in person and over the phone. Her ex-fiancé filed a restraining order against her, which she almost immediately violated, so she's dealing with the repercussions of that. My parents have cut off almost all contact with her at this point, and honestly, I'm relieved. I don't know where she is now, and I'm okay with that. She needs help, but it's not my responsibility to fix her. Since the move, life has been so much better. My husband and I are settling into our new home, and we're surrounded by his family, who have been nothing but supportive. I feel like we can finally focus on raising our son in a calm, loving environment without the constant drama that Emily brought into our lives. I can't say that I'll ever fully understand why Emily acted the way she did, but I've come to terms with the fact that she's no longer a part of my life, and that's okay. I need to protect my peace, my marriage, and my child. And now, for the first time in what feels like forever, I finally have that peace. Thank you to everyone who's followed this insane journey with me. Your support has meant more than you know, and I'm so glad that I have a happy ending to share. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Golden child brother proposed to his girlfriend at my wedding, tried to take all the attention onto himself. While I said nothing, I guess karma decided to get served itself. Hi guys! So, owing to some circumstances, I recently told my brother's girlfriend that she was doing the right thing by leaving him, and well, my family is all up in arms about it. All of this started because on the day of my wedding, my insufferable brother decided to propose to his girlfriend, and karma took care of him. My brother, Nick, 26, male, has been dating Riley, 20, female, for a couple of years. She and I went to college together and have been really good friends since then, so that's how she met Nick. He was the one who reached out to her and struck up a conversation with her on social media after having seen her in a couple of my photos, and she decided to go out with him. As far as I remember, they have been together for almost 5 years now. Meanwhile, my wife, 28F, and I, 28M, are high school sweethearts, and last week we got married. But of course, Nick could not stand the fact that one entire day was going to be totally about me and my wife. So he decided to make my wedding all about himself as well. He did so by proposing to Riley in front of all our guests at the reception. And of course, he hadn't discussed it with me or my wife, so it came as a total surprise to all of us. Everybody knows that it's quite unethical and weird to propose at somebody else's wedding without even getting their consent. But I knew that he was doing this on purpose to get a rise out of me. He is a huge attention seeker and is always competing with me for some reason, so this was not surprising. And I decided to keep quiet because I did not want to ruin the wedding by reacting immediately and making a scene. My wife also chose to do the same, and we waited for Riley to respond instead. And karma hit back instantly, because after a few really intense minutes of silence, Riley turned away from him and started walking up to the stage so she could get the mic. Everyone was really confused, especially Nick, and I had no idea what was about to happen. But then Riley started speaking, and before anything else, she looked at me and my wife and told us that she was genuinely sorry for doing this at our wedding. She had intended on waiting until after we were married because she really didn't want to create any drama. But since my brother had put her in such a tough position, she was going to have to come out and tell everyone the truth. And then, after apologizing to us, she dropped a bombshell, saying that she knew that this was all for show because Nick had actually been cheating on her for the past couple of months, and she had found out about it just the week before our wedding. I'm not even kidding. There was absolute silence after that because nobody knew how to react, including me and my wife. It was an absolute scandal, and it got worse when she went on speaking and told us that she had found a bunch of messages on his phone that he had been exchanging with one of his coworkers, and she knew that they had been hooking up for quite a few months. When she found out, she wanted to confront him about it immediately, but then she thought about me and refrained from doing anything that would cause drama because she knew that Nick was the biggest attention seeker on the planet and would be willing to go to any lengths to make sure that he was in the spotlight, even on the day of my wedding, because he was constantly competing with me. One of the biggest reasons that she did not confront him about the cheating in the week before the wedding was because she was aware of the fact that he would love nothing more than the opportunity to make everything all about himself. In the week leading up to the day of the wedding, she did not want to give him that satisfaction, which is why she had stayed quiet. Riley announced how she had always known that Nick hated me, and now she had finally figured out why. She said that it was mostly out of insecurity and jealousy because he was just inherently a loser, and revealed that even when they were spending time together, he would often talk crap about me to her, and it was exhausting to have to deal with somebody like that, since it felt like he hated me but was still weirdly obsessed with me. In spite of all of that, she had spent the last 5 years of her life with him, completely loyal and dedicated to him, and none of that had meant anything to him, which is why he had cheated. She announced that she had planned on breaking up with him, completely disappearing from his life without a word, a couple of days after the wedding, but he had decided to spring this proposal on her, and now she had no other option but to tell everybody the truth because she was not going to say yes to him after everything that she had found out. Besides, she didn't think that it would even matter if she said yes to him or not, because she was pretty sure that he was only proposing to her because he wanted to make this wedding about himself. He didn't actually love her or anything, and she was sure that she didn't love him anymore either. She then called him the biggest loser she has had the misfortune of meeting in her life, and after she was done with her speech, she turned to me and my wife and walked over to us so she could hug us and congratulate us before dramatically walking out of the wedding. I have to admit, it was pretty cool and she had her mic drop moment. And after she walked out, people completely lost their minds. Nick obviously left and chased after her once he had recovered from the shock of what had just happened, because I'm sure it has to be pretty embarrassing for him to be exposed like that. And my parents went after him because, well, he's their darling golden child, so why not? The rest of the guests were pretty confused, and everyone immediately started talking about what had just happened. So the bridesmaids and groomsmen got things under control, and we started serving lunch and stuff immediately so that we could get the entire event over with as quickly as possible, because it had pretty much turned into a soap opera at that point. On one hand, my wife and I were kind of disappointed that our wedding hadn't exactly gone according to plan, but on the other hand, we were also laughing about it because this would definitely be a wedding to remember for everyone else. Either way, it didn't even occur to me that my parents would try to involve me in this because I really had nothing to do with any of this. The only way I could possibly be involved was because it was my wedding that this happened at, which is a pretty stupid reason to drag me into this mess. But they decided to use that against me, along with the fact that Riley and I are good friends. And we really are good friends. She also gets along really well with my wife, and we have stayed in touch since the wedding fiasco, but I don't see how it's fair to ask me to try and get me to speak to her, so she'll give Nick another chance. If I'm being honest, I don't even think that Nick deserves another chance because he had been cheating on her, and that's pretty much unforgivable. On top of that, he had also decided to propose to her, and that must have been really insulting because he wasn't proposing to her because he actually loved her, he was just doing it for attention. Whatever he had done, it was going really low, and in spite of that, my parents expected me to speak to Riley and get her to at least talk to Nick, if not forgive him. They started pestering me literally the day after the wedding, not even giving me a chance to enjoy my life as a newlywed. Even after I told them that I wouldn't be doing anything of the sort, they started arguing with me, saying that since this had happened at my wedding, it was my responsibility as the host to fix it, which didn't even make any sense. I even blocked them so they wouldn't be able to contact me, but they started using burner phones and fake accounts on social media to keep trying to get to me. After a while, it started getting on my nerves, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. So last evening, I decided to reach out to Riley and send her a message saying that I was really proud of her for the stand that she had taken, even though it had caused quite a lot of drama at my wedding. I told her that she had done the right thing by dumping my brother because he doesn't deserve to be with her, and she needs somebody way better than him in her life. It wasn't like I was just saying it for the sake of it, just to get on the nerves of my family. I really meant it too. We had already been in touch ever since the wedding since she had reached out to apologize to me after the fiasco, and I wanted to make sure that she was doing all right because it couldn't have been emotionally easy for her to lay all out in the open after being with my brother for so many years. Anyway, I took a screenshot of the message that I had sent her, and then I unblocked my parents and sent them that screenshot. I also told them that I had made my feelings on this matter perfectly clear to everyone, and I was not going to get involved after this. So if they were actually hoping for me to take a stand for my brother, they could stop right now. Nick had always been a huge pain for me and he had never been nice to me, even though I had always tried to build a good relationship between us. That had never worked, and now I knew that he was never going to be a good person, so I wanted nothing to do with him, and I was genuinely really happy that Riley had left him. Once I sent that message, I blocked them again after saying that if they tried to contact me again, I would report them because I was really sick of them trying to blame me and get me involved in something that I had no part in. This morning, it was not my parents that I received a message from, but Nick. He had sent me a really long email saying that right from our childhood, he had always treated me as competition because even though our parents treated him like the golden child, everyone knew that I was better than him in every aspect whatsoever, and that always made him insecure and jealous of me. And I didn't make it better by trying to be his friend either, because it just irritated him, which is why he had always tried to outdo me in everything. And maybe he had lost sight of what was important while trying to compete with me. But having said that, he also said that if I was not willing to help him out, there was no need for me to reach out to Riley and send that message to her to turn her against him even more. That was excessive. He didn't apologize for anything. He just told me that he had an explanation for how he had behaved so far, but the least I could have done for him was at least stay out of it. Even if my parents kept annoying me, I could have just ignored them instead of going out of my way to text Riley and tell her that she had done the right thing and stuff, because this was between the two of them and I didn't need to interfere. He also said that the only reason my parents had always treated him better than me was because they were aware of the fact that he was a bit insecure and jealous, and everyone could see it except for me. I never realized how literally everybody else in the family constantly praised me right in front of him and never had a nice thing to say about him, which made him feel like I was always overshadowing him. That might have been true, but I think a better way to deal with that would have been to try and be better in the things that he was competing with me instead of meaninglessly trying to seek attention by showing off his achievements and rubbing it in my face. Anyway, all that was in the past, and in spite of that, he told me that he still hadn't been able to move on from any of it because it had really affected him. The email was basically just full of him trying to explain himself, but not once apologizing. However, I still felt bad for him because I can't imagine what it must have felt like to have an older brother who was a bit of an overachiever and had to live up to that standard. But the problem was that even while people were praising me, they were never putting him down. It was he who perceived that as an insult, even though it was never meant to be one. Regardless of what had happened in our childhood, it didn't explain why he had carried that into his adult life as well, because I think he should have grown up a little bit, especially given the whole situation with Riley. I don't know how to feel about it anymore because after reading that email, I feel kind of bad. It might be irrational and stuff, but that's how I feel, and I really need to know if I did the right thing by reaching out to her and telling her that she did the right thing by dumping my brother, because I know it has really hurt a lot of people's feelings, so I'm feeling kind of iffy about it. AITA for telling my brother's ex-girlfriend that she did the right thing by dumping him? Date 1. Hi, so a few days back my brother reached out to me with that email, and I have been thinking about whether I had done the right thing by telling Riley that it was a good thing that she had dumped Nick or not. And you know what? I did the right thing. I'm not going to worry about it anymore because that email means nothing to me, if I'm being honest. It made me feel bad for a couple of days, but then I spoke to my wife, spoke to a couple of my friends, and even read the comments here, and I realized that the fact that he hadn't apologized to me shows a lot about how he actually feels. He was just upset that I had reached out to Riley, and that's the only reason he had given me such a detailed explanation of how he had felt when he was a kid. Well, it doesn't matter because a lot of us have childhood trauma, but that's not an excuse for doing whatever you want as an adult. Him getting away with it, he thought that he could just try to guilt-trip me, try to make me feel bad about his sob story from his childhood. And in a way he was right because I did feel bad for him, but not bad enough to take back what I had said. In fact, even if I do take back what I said, it's not going to change the facts. Riley did actually do the right thing by dumping him at the wedding so publicly since he was actually cheating on her. He had no business proposing to her just for attention. It was disgusting and really low. On top of that, we all knew that he was only doing it on the day of my wedding because he couldn't stand me, and yet he expects me to feel bad for him? Yeah, fat chance. I just blocked that email address because I don't want it to be able to reach out to me anymore with any of his BS excuses. I had also been speaking to Riley and I told her everything, and she told me that I don't need to feel bad for him either. Apparently he has been trying to get in touch with her, but she hasn't responded, and she even got a couple of her friends to bring back all her stuff from his apartment so she wouldn't have to interact with him directly. She has been deleting and ignoring all his messages without even reading them since he has been messaging her from various accounts and numbers because his own has been blocked. She told me that he can keep trying, but she doesn't care, and I think that's the only way to deal with Nick at this point. I'm doing the same thing too, and thankfully after I sent that screenshot of my message to Riley to my parents, they haven't bothered to contact me either. I don't know how long it's going to take for them to get over this, but I just hope that they do and stop bothering me. Update 2. Hey, so it's been 6 days since I've blocked Nick, and so far he hasn't done anything to get in touch with me yet. But yesterday my parents showed up at my house and started demanding to let them in so they could speak to me. Of course, I told them that I didn't want to speak to them at all because I knew what they were going to talk about. However, they did not leave and kept insisting that I had to open up the door to let them in so they could discuss what was going on in the family. Because no matter what I wanted to say to Riley, I was still going to be a part of the family and I couldn't just ignore the situation at hand. Apparently the reason that they were here was because whatever had happened at my wedding had put the reputation of our family at stake, and so they needed to speak to me so we could all do some damage control, and they were here to brainstorm ideas. I found the whole thing a bit ridiculous because it's not like our family is extremely popular and well-known. We're not celebrities. I don't even know what reputation they were talking about because I'm sure that people will gossip for a couple of days and then forget about this scandal. Yeah, folks might revisit it as a funny incident from time to time since it was quite hilarious to watch Nick be completely humiliated like that, but he brought that on to himself. But apart from that, I don't understand why they were trying to take it so seriously, and I told them that I was not going to brainstorm any sort of ideas with them because putting out a statement or whatever was only going to attract more attention to this. So if they really wanted to be done with all of this drama and protect the reputation, they had better not address it at all and just let it go. Also, I didn't want to end up looking like a fool by acting so self-important, and I suggested the same thing to them as well because it would be quite embarrassing to be related to these kinds of people. It was already quite embarrassing. I didn't want to make it worse. Plus, I was not going to put out any statement in defense of Nick because I don't want to be defending him since what he did with Riley and me was very wrong and he deserves every bit of the ridicule that he's receiving right now. Anyway, I didn't even open the door to my parents, and when they refused to go away, insisting that we needed to talk, I told them that either they go away or I called the cops, and that's when they finally left. But even before leaving, my dad cursed me out and I could hear my mother crying, but I knew that it was just theatrics so I would feel bad for them, and it was exactly the strategy that Nick had been using, so I just ignored it and then eventually they left me alone. Update 3. Hi guys. So, for days ago my parents visited me at my place, and I had refused to let them in. It was very clear that I wanted nothing to do with them anymore, so I had no contact with my family. Yesterday, my wife and I left for our honeymoon, but as soon as we landed, our phone was flooded with messages from our relatives and stuff because apparently my parents had taken it upon themselves to put out a statement on behalf of the family, and they had even added my name at the very end for some reason. In the post that they had made, my parents had said that they were very upset and embarrassed by the incident that had taken place at my wedding, and they wanted to apologize to all the guests for whatever they had to witness because it was supposed to be a personal thing. But Riley had chosen to air dirty linen in public for no reason other than to humiliate and embarrass Nick. They also claimed that apparently Riley was the actual attention seeker in this situation and not their son, which is why she had chosen to expose Nick and his affair at my wedding instead of just dealing with the situation privately, because she wanted to publicly shame not just the man she had been with for the past 5 years but also our family, which was her whole agenda, and if there was anybody to blame for the situation, it would be her. So basically, in the statement that they had put out, they completely refused to take any accountability and acted as if Nick was completely innocent in this whole situation, even though it was he who had cheated and then chosen to propose at my wedding without even consulting with me first. I'm not going to lie, this is not something that's unexpected from my parents, but what really angered me was the fact that they had chosen to sign my name in the end as well, and ended the post with the line from my parents' names, Nick and my name. They knew very well that I did not agree with any of the things that they were saying, so I knew that they were doing this to jeopardize my friendship with Riley. It was absolutely unacceptable, and now everybody was questioning me, so I decided to call them up to get them to take that post down or at least remove my name, but to my character, they did not answer any of my phone calls or messages, and I'm still waiting. At least I have spoken to Riley about the post and told her that I had nothing to do with it, which she understands, and she told me that she didn't even think that I had anything to do with it either. I just wanted to rant about it for a bit, which is why I posted this update, but I'll let you know what happens once I speak to them, which seems unlikely because they're all sly cowards. Update 4. So the update you guys were waiting for is finally here. My parents finally reached back out to me. I had unblocked them to let them know that they had to take my name out of the post or remove it altogether because I had already told them that I did not want to be associated with any of this, and yet they had taken the liberty to add my name to the post without my consent. I didn't know yet if I could sue them or not, but it didn't matter. I still threatened them with a lawsuit. When they called me back, I was on my honeymoon and I was already pretty annoyed that they were still not letting me have a good time after my wedding, and they constantly kept up a stream of nonsensical behavior just to get on my nerves. So as soon as they called me back, I started yelling at them, and when I stopped, that's when my parents told me that they heard me loud and clear and they were going to take my name out of the post. But it also meant that I was ending my association with my family, and since I couldn't be bothered to even stand with them in such tough times, I didn't need to be considered a part of the family anymore, and I really didn't have a problem with it, so I didn't know why they were acting like it was a huge deal. Then they told me that if they removed my name from the post, it would mean that they would remove my name from their will, and I could stop hoping for any sort of inheritance from them. I was shocked, not because they were trying to threaten me, but because they actually thought that it was going to work. I couldn't believe that they thought that my integrity could be bought out with their inheritance, and more than anything else, I couldn't believe that they were stupid enough to try this because it wasn't even as though they were extremely rich. My parents are middle management at best, so I really don't know what sort of inheritance they were talking about, and so I told them that I was completely fine with this arrangement as long as they removed my name from the post. I didn't care what they did afterward. They could stop calling me their son for all that I cared because I had had enough of these people. All my life I had had to put up with their stupidity, but I was not going to tolerate this anymore. I was done, and they told me that they were going to cut me off forever. I told them that I was more than okay with it, and then I hung up. After I checked with my relatives and made sure that they had removed my name from the post, I finally blocked them again, and now I'm going to focus on just enjoying my honeymoon with my wife because I have no intention of letting them ruin this. Even if they do something after this, I'm just going to deal with it after I get back home and have a social media detox. I really think that it's much needed for me right now. Update 5. Hi, so my wife and I just returned from our honeymoon. It's been a little over 2 weeks since we last posted, and I feel really relaxed and rejuvenated. The social media detox really did me a lot of good. Anyway, now that I'm back, I think it's time for another update, so here it goes. After my parents removed my name from that post, they cut all ties with me, and I was quite happy about it. I honestly didn't care because so far the only reason I had maintained a relationship with them was purely out of obligation, and I guess the fact that I didn't even seem to care about it was what made them even more mad. So they started trying to badmouth me to our relatives, but they were not having any of it. So long story short, nobody's speaking to my family anymore, and on top of that, they even had to take the post down because Riley threatened to sue them as well. I say good for her because what Nick did to her was not right, so they really had no right to try and defend his actions and try to make her look like the bad guy. She and I are still in touch, and like classic Nick, he's playing the victim again because from what I hear, he's been telling everybody that the reason it didn't work out with Riley was because it was just not meant to be. Apparently he thinks that she had always taken my side over him, and so it was just not meant to be. He has been trying to make it sound like her friendship with me was more important to her than their relationship, which was not the case at all, because even Riley had told me that whenever he would start talking about me, she would always only try to divert the topic but never tried to take my side or whatever like he was saying. Anyway, I don't think it matters because the people that he has been saying it to, they're mutual friends. Most of them are on Riley's side and have been trying to get him to apologize, but whatever, it doesn't even matter if he apologizes or not because I don't think anybody cares about his apology anymore. Even Riley is moving on to better things. She's moving away soon, and I'm really happy for her. The past doesn't really matter anymore. What really matters is that my wife and I are doing well after the honeymoon, and we are content at the moment. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.